Hello, 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 folks. How we doing? I hope everyone is having a good week so far. Happy Wednesday, I suppose. Good to hear it, Rascal. Good to see you. How's everybody else's week going? We'll get started here in about a minute and 30 seconds. Gonna have another fun, chill Huntober stream this evening. Hey, Renzi, welcome. All right, we'll get started in about 1 minute. I don't know about you all, but I am so cold. This time of year just kills me. We've had a cold snap here the last couple days, and that's not been helping. Hey, Queen Sub. I finally caved and turned the heating on. Was it yesterday or the day before? I finally turned the heater on for the season. Like I can't take it anymore. Yeah, MK Beast. That Midwest weather is a beast, isn't it? Yeah. Well, Lorenzi, you're lucky then, because yeah, I do not like the cold. Hey, Jazzy Pants. It's 95 in LA. My goodness. Wow. Welcome to the stream, Ninja Erica. 95. Golly. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Hello, hello, everyone. Again, happy Wednesday. Monomer says, till what time are you streaming? We'll do another cutoff at 10 p.m. Eastern, so 3 hours maximum. We'll see how long we go. You know, if we make 3 hours, if we don't, it's okay. These are hey Kasava. These are what we're calling, chill Huntober streams, because I know you all have got a lot on your plate right now with Huntober, and so I'm not trying to be, another obligation, right? I'm trying to still give good information, but not give you anything else to juggle in, what you're trying to do this month. I want you to be successful in the hunt, and I just want to help you get there instead of hindering you in any way. So we're doing chill streams, we're doing time limited streams, and only good vibes. Hey, Interplanet. Oh, captions. Thank you, Rascal. Let me get them going. 1 second. But we do have something really interesting to talk about tonight. We have a few things actually. Um, oh, let me see if this is working. Hang on. Oh, there we go. Okay, captions are going. Should have captions available now. So yeah, I wanted to share something really interesting with you this evening. And I'd mentioned before, so we talk about prep a lot, right? We talk about prep a lot when we're talking about interviews. So we say, oh, if you're given a technical challenge, do it with prep, do prep. But we never really think, is prep relevant after the interview? You can kind of get this sort of myopic focus on just the interview and getting through the interview. But prep can also be relevant in once you actually have a job. And when I learned about prep here in 100 Devs, I was like, wait, hang on a minute. This approach seems really familiar. This is actually something that I do in my day job as a developer. So I'm a SQL developer in my day job. And I'm like, wait, I do prep every time I, approach a new project, or every time I build out a specification document for a new table. I use the prep method to build that spec. And so I wanted to show you all an example tonight of how prep is used to build real documentation. So I have a real document, a real specification document that will be used to build a database table. It's not been built yet, but in our next sprint, it will get built. And so I want to show you a real spec document for a for a database table and show you how prep was used to build it. So that's the plan tonight. RW says, do we have a recorded live talking about the prep thing? I didn't find it. Yeah, we've done prep several times on my stream. We put it into practice and seen how it can be applied to coding challenges. Pretty much every time you see a Code Wars stream from me, we'll be using prep to solve those Code Wars. So that's, you can see it applied there. And I know that, Leon introduced it in one of his classes as well. I don't know which one. But yeah, there's definitely, it's available on Leon's channel, or pretty much, like I say, any of my streams on my YouTube channel or here on Twitch, where we solve Code Wars. We use prep to do that. So if you want to link to my YouTube channel, you can do !YouTube. That's where all my past streams are saved. And so hopefully that'll help you out a little bit. All right, and so the reason I'm using this screen, this display, instead of my usual, showing my screen just yet, is because I do want to give a little disclaimer, is that when I show you this spec, I don't expect you to understand or comprehend, what's in the spec, like the elements of the spec. We're going to go through all of them. I don't want you to see it and be like, oh gosh, I don't understand any of this, I'm going to fail. Like, no, that's not the point. This is a SQL spec. There's going to be stuff in here that looks weird or something you haven't seen before. The point is to understand how prep was used to build it, and we'll walk through each of that. So I'm going to switch over here in just a second, but I didn't want you to see that right away and get completely distracted being like, oh God, I don't understand. Yeah, Galaxy, exactly. Leslie Lamport compares building a program to building a house. You wouldn't build a house without first doing some planning. Yeah, and that's exactly what a spec document is for. So a specification is often abbreviated to the word spec. So you'll hear me use the word spec, and that is just short for specification document. And yeah, a specification document is absolutely that. It's a blueprint for how you build an end result. And yeah, because you would never just blunder into a project for someone else without learning what those requirements are and what they want to see. And the best way to gather those requirements and make sure that both parties are communicating effectively with each other is to use the prep method, to communicate using prep to make sure that every step in that process is fulfilled. Hey, MME. Don't worry, I won't be talking about any APIs here, Mavi. All right, so let's switch over to my screen and take a look at this spec, what it's for. We'll talk about what it's for, and then we'll talk about how it was put together. All right, so can you all see that? Is that visible enough for you? Seeing it on my second monitor isn't necessarily a good indication for how it appears, on somebody who's watching it on Twitch. So for somebody who's watching it on Twitch, so let me know if that looks okay. Okay, good. All right, so this is literally just an Excel spreadsheet. There's nothing magical or special about it. And it's just an Excel spreadsheet. And what this specification is for a database table. And this is a SQL database table. And so SQL organizes data in tables, whereas Mongo uses documents. And so tables literally are like a giant Excel spreadsheet. It has columns. Those columns have headers, and then there's data in those columns that goes down in rows. So rows and columns, just like an Excel spreadsheet that could be, 2 or 3 million rows long or more, oftentimes more. Yeah, and so this spec is for a particular table called course material. And what we're doing here is, a lot of the times what I do in my day job is I take data out of a source system. I retrieve data from a source system. I take that data and I do stuff to it. So it could be formatting dates differently. It could be adding fields. It could be removing fields. It could be adding descriptions to fields that don't have a description. All sorts of things. I take that data out of the source system. I transform it, and I load it into a target system that the users can access. And we call that extract, transform, load, or ETL. And so if we think about what I'm doing there, I'm taking data out, doing stuff to it, and loading data in. Now, right there, we actually have like the major components of prep, right? So we have parameters. So what are the inputs? Well, it's the data coming from the source system. What is the result? Well, it's what I'm loading into the target system. And then examples in pseudocode help us figure out how we transform that data in the middle before we load it into the target. So that's all of the components of prep right there. And all of those need to be components of our specification. Yoink, indeed. Yes, I yoink data from the source system, I transform it, and I load it into a target system. Yeah. And so what we're doing here is we're essentially building the target. So this is going to be what the end user sees. In the end, the end user is going to have a table called source material that they can access, and they won't necessarily know or care how we got there. But what's important is that both the developer and the business side agree on what that end result is supposed to look like before we put it into practice. All right, so let's look and see how we can apply prep to build out this spec. So this first column here is essentially the name of each field. And this is what the user can specify. They essentially say, all right, this is what I want each field to be called. And in this case, this table is called course material. And so what we're doing here is we're talking about the required materials like textbooks or other things for various sources, for various courses, because I work at a university. And so obviously there's lots of courses and there's lots of materials that go along with those courses, lots of really expensive textbooks and lab manuals and supplemental materials. And so this table is meant to catalog all of the materials associated with every single course at every single campus for my university. Yeah, so this is a database table, Beverand. Yeah, this is a database table. It's no, this isn't a report. It is a data. It's a database table. There will be a delivery view on top of it. But yeah, this is a database table. Okay, so these are the fields that the end user wants to see, and they can specify what they want these fields to be named. We just kind of give them some default names, and then they can change that if they want to. And here we have what each field contains. So like the definition of each field, right? Because for some of these, that might be hard to tell. So for example, what the heck, the name material type code, if I just say that out of context, that means nothing, right? The end user isn't going to know what that means. And so here we just write a little definition, and so that the user can look at it and be like, oh yeah, okay, I know what that's for. Or at least they know what that means. They might not know what it's for, but they at least know what it's trying to contain. And then here we just have the type. That's not really relevant here. SQL requires that you declare a type for the data that you're putting in. This is not something we've had to do so far in 100 devs. We don't care about type. JavaScript doesn't care about type anyway, but SQL certainly does. So we'll skip that. But right here, this is the source. So all of these fields are being pulled from another table, from that source table where I'm yoinking them, and that's called SBCRSMAT. Again, doesn't really mean very much, right? But this is the source field in that table, which contains that information. And we can see from the name of these fields that they are very confusing. And just looking at them, you wouldn't be able to tell really what's in them, right? Like if I look at this one, STB camp desk. Okay, what? What does that mean? Or something like SBCR SMAT is required. Okay, what does that mean, right? And so these are the sources, but they don't really tell you what's in them. And so what we also do here is we provide what we call profiling info, where we look at actual data that's in those fields. So I would run a query on the database and I would grab just some examples, right? I would run the query on this particular field. So I would look at um, SDB camp, SDB camp description or desk, and I would say, all right, what's in this field? Oh, it's campus one, campus two, etc. Oh, these are okay. These are campus names. I see what's in here. And so in this column, I basically populate this with examples of what is in each field. And then finally, we have this additional information column where these are kind of examples of what the developer should do to potentially get data into this field or manipulate the data, do that transformation on the data. So in this case, we look at the material type code and we say, well, if material type code is text, then the description should be textbook. And here, if it's sup, then the description should be supplemental material. And we generally get this after we talk to the business and they say, oh, okay, well, this is a code field here. We want a description field as well. So give us these descriptions just like this. And so we write notes for the developer to be like, hey, do this when you get to this field, right? And so just with this quick run through, again, you don't have to worry about like understanding the technical nature of all this, but just with this quick run through, do you think we can identify the components of prep within this spec? So for example, what do we think this column might equate to within that prep acronym? What do we think this column might equate to? Hey, Ryan. This column called source. What do we think this might equate to in the prep acronym? I'm going to hydrate. Yeah, it's parameters because parameters are inputs, right? Parameters are inputs. And so we go and we build this spec and we say, what are the inputs? Yeah, what are the inputs? Well, the inputs are the source fields that I'm pulling in to build this end result, right? Those are the parameters. Okay. And if I hover over this, we can see, yep, we're right, parameter, perfect. All right, and so the next letter what do we think if we look at this column over here, profiling info? So here I go into each field and I say, all right, what's in each field? What do we think this could be in prep? Any guesses? If I'm going into the field, hey, Taco, what do we think this column equates to in prep? Yeah, it's just examples, right? So we're taking examples of what's in each field to show the business what is in each field. Because there's been many times when I've been reviewing with the business side and I say, hey, do you guys think you really need, I don't know, do you guys think you really need the material notes field? And they're like, I don't know. What's even in that field? You tell them the name and they don't even know what it is. And so what can be really helpful if you're able to show them examples to kind of trigger their memory to be like, oh yeah, actually I use that field. I'm going to need that. Or, oh yeah, that field is like the values in there are not accurate and you should just drop that hot potato and run. So don't even bring that field in. And so that can really help give the business, having examples can really help give the business a feel for their own data because they might not know it as well as you do. Yeah, so examples. All right, so we've got the P and we've got the E. So what do we think this column might equate to? So remember, these are the field names. These are the field names that the business has specified that they want to see on the end result. So when I deliver them this table, this is what the business wants to see when they go and query this data. So what do we think this signifies as part of prep? Yeah, it's the results, it's the returns, right? So we show this to the business and we say, hey, you tell us what you want these to be called. We might fill them in with some default values, and then the business says, no, I want you to rename that because we're already using that name somewhere else. And you're like, okay, sure, I'll rename this for you. And you come to an agreement on what those names are going to be. So in this case, yep, that's the result. Now, anybody have a guess on where the pseudocode component of this might be? Which column? So these are the column names here. What do we think the pseudocode? What do we think the pseudocode element of prep is being used here? Where do we think that's being used? So we've used the PRE. So where do we think the pseudocode comes into play? So we said that name is the result, right? Because that's what I'm giving the business, right? I'm giving the business the result of the field names that they wanted. Yeah, it's additional information. Exactly, because this is where we're giving the developer some clues on what they should do when they approach this field. So in this case, I'm telling the developer, hey, if material type code is text, then material type description should be textbook. And if it's sup, then description is supplemental material. If code is none, then material is no materials required, right? And so this, if I just tried to run this, in any language, it wouldn't work, right? This is not real code. It's an example of an if statement, but it needs a lot more work to actually function. However, this is enough pseudocode. It's a quick whiteboard of what the developer is actually going to have to do when they get to this field. So this is just simple. These are all examples of quick pseudocode. Not that, but these four are. These are examples of pseudocode, which indicates to the developer what they're supposed to do. And so essentially what this spec does is it combines all four elements of prep in order to give the business side a feeling of comfort. They know exactly what they're going to get out of this spec, right? They know exactly what field names they're going to see in the end result. We agree on those together. They specify what field names they want to see. We know exactly where those fields are coming from, right? The source. We know the parameters, the inputs. These are all the inputs here. We know all of them. We know what we're getting out. And we know through our examples in our pseudocode what's going to happen to that data when it travels from the source to the target. So using prep on the job for realsies, like I do this a couple times a week. We have meetings with the business side where we go over specifications before we start development, and using prep on the job to build these kind of specs and just to have general conversations when you're starting a project or a new task. That can be immensely helpful in making sure that both the developer and the business can agree on what's going in, what's being done, and what's coming out when you finish that product. Oh, thank you, Anonymous, for the 2 bits. I appreciate it. And Matt says, is prep something Leon made up or part of a systems analysis framework? No, it's not something he made up. I don't know exactly where it comes from, but I think the overall sentiment is pretty common, right? Successful projects rely on a complete understanding between the business and the developer. And so I just happened to notice that, the kind of work that I was doing in my regular everyday job was really perfectly lining up with the prep framework. And so it's important to remember that whenever you go into an interview, what you're seeing, or what the interviewer is looking for, is not just can you solve a code wars, right? Or can you solve LeetCode? Can you list all the methods or all the data structures and algorithms or whatever? It's about how are you going to perform once they hire you? Are you going to, can you dissect a problem? Can you think about a problem holistically from the inputs to the actions you perform to the outputs? Do you show adaptability? If you state what you think the output is supposed to be and they tell you something different, then can you adapt your approach to produce that new output? It's about do they see you as someone who can work well on their team going forward? And that's why prep is so important, because it's the kind of thing you're actually going to use on the job. And so displaying those characteristics in an interview is exactly what they want to see. I hope that makes sense. And I hope it was useful to see how, like, this stuff, yeah, it's not just for interviews. It's also for real life on the job every day. And I've actually found myself using it. Yeah, so prep is parameters, results, examples, and pseudocode. Exactly. Yep. Prep is parameters, results, examples, and pseudocode. And if you're, not in 100 devs, you might be going, okay, like what? But in general, prep is specified as the method that is it's basically the best method to use when you're asked a technical question, like a coding challenge, in an interview setting. So you're in a job interview and they say, I don't know, loop through an array and average the results or something like that. And so using prep shows that you can talk through these problems in a logical way, understand the limitations of the problem, the limitations of the result, and sort of explain what you're doing while you're doing it. Yeah. And so, yeah, that's how we can use prep on the job after the interview process is finished. And I was saying too, um, I've often used prep kind of in reverse a little bit. So what you'll find is, um, once you're working as a developer, or working with, maybe on a technical team with non-technical people, they're going to approach you with problems or issues in code or in systems that you manage or maintain. Um, and you'll get somebody, saying, hey, developer, I need, I'm missing a field. I'm missing the field, publisher, and I need to see it in my report. And that'll be the email. I need a publisher field to show up in my report, please. And that's what you get. And you're like, okay. What do you need? And so if you can approach it and say, sort of use prep on them a little bit. So using prep in reverse, right? Instead of you having to go through prep, you use it back on the person who's making the request, and you say, okay, so can you tell me, first off, where is this data coming from? What is the source that you want me to hit in order to get this publisher field that you want? Where does it come from? And they say, oh, okay. And they, say, all right, well, this is the source I would use and all that. Cool. All right. So there's your inputs, parameters. And all right. And so you said you needed it in a report. Can you show me what report that is? Where does that report live? And where would you like this field in that report? And they said, okay, yeah, this is the report that I pull every week, and it's in this location, whatever, this system. And I'd like it to be this field right here between these two other fields. And you're like, all right, awesome. There are my results, my returns. So that's what they want. The end result is that they want this field in this location in this report. Cool. And then the next thing I would say is, okay, so can you give me some examples of how you want this field to look? So when you pull this report, how do you want this field to display? Does it have some extra formatting? Um, are there, capitalization problems? Do I need to fix anything with punctuation? Um, are there weird symbols that show up in the code that are in the field that you want me to get rid of? All sorts of things, right? And so they'll say, oh, okay, yeah, here's some examples of when I pull the data, this is how I want it to look. And they'll send you an Excel spreadsheet or something, right? And you're like, awesome, there's my examples. So we have our parameters, we have our returns, we have our examples. And then the last thing I might do is just kind of talk it through with them and say, okay, so I think what I'm going to do, what I hear you saying you want, is I'm going to go into this source system. I'm going to grab this field. I'm going to remove all these special characters for you. I'm going to fix the capitalization problems. I'm going to remove underscores. And then I'm going to dump it into this report as the third field down, or third field across or whatever. And I'm going to sort it alphabetically. And they're like, yes, that's exactly what I want. And so you've talked through the entire process with them. And so that way, when you deliver your result, there's no surprises and you're less likely to have to go back and do more work later. And so, yeah, prep can go both ways, right? But that's just one example. That's an example of how I approach prep, using prep in just informal, for informal small discussions about adding a field here and there, making changes to something here and there, or for bigger projects like this whole new database table that we're building out here. And so it can work for big and small, and can be applied on the job. And if you can show on the job, that you're able to fully flesh out these projects before you start, that can be a really great skill to have, because your end users are going to be happy. Your manager, your end users are going to be happy because they get what they want the first time or second time. There might be some things that they don't know they wanted, and then your manager is going to be happy because they don't have to devote extra hours to doing rework all the time, and you're going to be happy because doing rework based on a misunderstanding is always frustrating. So you can reduce those misunderstandings using prep, and yeah, and just have a better work environment. D5 says you will always run into two approaches. One, let's build MVP, then figure the rest out. Second, wait, let's find all the possibilities, and then we will build the project. Yeah, there can be different approaches, but that doesn't mean that you can't gather requirements beforehand. What you might do is you might gather requirements, build an MVP, and send it to the user for testing. You might say, yeah, this isn't perfect, and I know it's not perfect, but we have questions X, Y, and Z. And so it would be easier for the user to answer those questions if we gave them something to play with. And that's something that we do often, is we always gather requirements. And it doesn't have to be a long process. Sometimes it's just literally 10 minutes of, hey, look, we wrote this up. Like I drew up this spec. You put it in front of them and they'd be like, yep, that looks good. And then you give them an MVP and they play with it, they test it, they find what you missed, and then you go back and you do a second pass, and that's okay. That's planned. That's part of iterative development, um, and yeah. And you can also go the other way, is building the whole thing and then sending it out and saying it's done. That's probably um, the less valued approach, right? If you don't give the end user the chance to comment, they might be frustrated because they say, well, I didn't know it was going to look, I didn't know it was going to do that. Even though you did spec it out beforehand, there can still be things that they don't know. And so I think, budgeting for at least two passes is probably reasonable if you can. Takes assumptions off the table. Yeah. And this really also, it covers your butt too. So using prep to spec out a project beforehand helps you cover your butt, because especially you got to if you can get it in writing, that really helps too. And yeah, exactly like Matt says, at least it's done in email or it's documented here, so that way they can't say, well, they can, but you can refute it easily. They can't say, oh, well, you didn't ask me if I wanted that field. You'd be like, yeah, I did. And in our specs, the fields that are this kind of gold color, they're ones that are not going to be in the end result. They were ones that were in the source data, and then the user has said, I don't want these fields. And so you could say, they could say, well, you didn't ask me if I wanted the data origin field. You'd be like, yeah, I did. It's right here in the spec, and it's commented out because it's xed out because you didn't want it. And so it's a great way to cover your butt, make sure that everybody understands the requirements beforehand, everybody understands what they're getting, and you know exactly how to work the problem. And it also can be a great way to work with others on a problem as well. So if you can bring an issue that you're having to a group, and you can say, look, here's what I talked about with the business, and here's what they said they want. Here's where it's coming from. Here's some examples about what they want. You can take that to your other developers on your team and be like, look, all right, I have all these pieces. Now how do I put them together, or how do I tackle this specific part of this? And they can get up to speed much more quickly that way. So yeah, prep is really valuable, and it's not just for interviews. It can work for you quite well on the job, and I've used it many times because I've been burned. going into a project without clear requirements. They tell you, oh, I just need this field and I need you to put it in here. And so you grab the field that you think it is and you put it in where you think they want it, and you're wrong on both counts. So always gather your requirements first. So, any questions on using prep, either for interviews or on the job or both? Any questions on that method? Hold on, hydrate. Whew, my voice is still a little scratchy. No worries, Bob. We were really, all this is here on the screen. This is not anything you need to understand. This is just showing how we use prep to build a real specification document. So, really, everything I've said in the last few minutes is just kind of reinforcing that, what we talked about earlier. So, no, you aren't expected to understand everything that's here. But this is a real specification document that I or one of my other developer colleagues is going to start working on probably next week. And the other cool thing about building out requirements beforehand and fleshing those out very clearly is that I don't have to be the one to build this. It's we have our inputs, we have our outputs, we have our examples, and we have our pseudocode. And so somebody else could totally just pop right in and pick this up and develop it without having to come back and be like, okay, wait, what did they want? Because this spells it all out. So yeah, basically whenever we're asked things at work through it with prep and get all your parameters and clarify as much as you can from the beginning. Yeah, and I mean, you don't always have to like go through and say like, okay, I'm using prep method now. These are, you know but you can at least make sure that you know what's going in, what's coming out. Hopefully see examples of what the person wants or what the requester wants, and then maybe talk out sort of the methodology that you might use. Yeah yeah essentially that's all it is, Bob. It's just a way of thinking about problems holistically. Any other questions? Matt said I would maybe add an extra R to that. Second R is business outcome and value. Yeah, and then I guess that depends on how how your team approaches projects, right? So if you're budgeting time and that kind of thing, and then you might, even before you get to the prep stage, you might say, okay, but why do you need this? Like, I know what the technical outcome is supposed to be, or I'm sure you can tell me what the technical outcome is supposed to be, but what's the business outcome, what's the business result? And so yeah, depending on how tight your team's time is budgeted, you may not be able to accommodate every single request that you get. Hopefully, if you have a good manager, they can help you filter those requests. I know our manager at my work helps filter a lot of the requests that we get, right? And helps figure out, okay, wait, first off, is this our problem? And then secondly, okay, if it is our problem, then who has the availability and the skills to take on this particular task? And so our manager helps with that pretty well. And your manager should too. Because yeah, sometimes people will come with requests that sound easy to them, right? They'll be like, I just want, this a field that counts, that counts a particular value, and I just want it in this report. And then once you get into the prep process and you clearly define the inputs and the outputs and the pseudocode of like the methodology that it would take to accomplish that, you might be like, well, yeah, but the source doesn't ever talk to the output, and I can't get this count without doing six other things, and you might find that the time expenditure just isn't worth it. So that time expenditure versus that time value balance could occur. That scale could tip at several points in the process. It could, before you, it could tip before you even take on the task, right? It could just be like, no, we're not doing that. Or it could be like, yeah, we could probably do that. And then once you actually start fleshing it out with prep, then you're like, oh crap, nope, that's going to be too hard. We can't do that. I'm sorry. And so yeah, there's several points where that switch could flip. But we try to do, the goal is that everybody understands as much as they can about what's going to happen before you get into it. And so hopefully, if you have to say no, the requester will understand why you're saying no because you've been clear about, the process, the length of time it would take. Literally me with my first 100 hours project. Are you saying that you got into it and then realized it would be a bit too meaty? Is that what you're saying, Bob? Yeah. So, any last questions on prep? I know this isn't, you realize it would be too expensive and over the top. Sometimes you get into that. Yeah, that happens. It's okay. I'm sure you still learn something though, even if it's, the current upper limits of what you're able to do with the time that you have. Yeah, you learned web scraping exactly. All right. So, any other questions about prep, um, or how we use prep, or how we use prep in an interview, um, or on the job? Either one. It's okay if you don't. I just wanted to share, keep things in perspective a little bit because we're so hyper focused on interviews right now that it can be easy to forget that, yeah, the interviews are just the first step, right? And then after everything after that is actually on the job. Nice. Okay. Yeah. Good. I'm glad you liked it. And I did clear this with my manager to share beforehand. So, and I anonymized the data and I changed the table names and I changed field names, so that it's a reasonable reflection of the types of things that we do. But a lot of the specifics have been changed. Just, insider secret. It's not really secrets. It's just, making sure that data is protected. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Jenks. Yeah. Okay, so another thing I wanted to talk about, and I'm going to switch to Big Mind Wolf here. So so the spreadsheet isn't distracting anyone. All right. Okay, there we go. So another thing I wanted to talk about. So as we get into the interview process, every time that Leon brings up, or someone else brings up, getting out there and networking and talking to people and building out coffee chats and hitting up people on LinkedIn and that kind of thing. Oh, hi, Rayton. Good to see you. I always see folks in chat saying things like, but what about the introverts? Or, cries an introvert. Or, oh no, I'm an introvert. What do I do? Or, you know, uh, other things about like, I'm an introvert. I can't do this. It's too hard. What are introverts supposed to do? That kind of thing. Um, and so I wanted to kind of address that a little bit. How many folks in chat would say that they are introverts versus extroverts? If you don't want to say, that's fine, but I am genuinely curious about how people self-identify here in chat. Okay, we got a omnivert, introvert, omnivert. I'm super extroverted and networking is pretty terrifying. I feel like this needs to be addressed. Introvert, okay, I'm seeing things are trending towards introverts or people who feel kind of, a little bit unsure. Yeah, introvert. Yeah, so pretty heavily introvert. And, and that could be, just the demographic of people that, tend to watch Twitch streams too. It could be a demographic thing, or it could be a reflection on the wider, society as we know it. I don't know the answer to that. Intro till I get to know you. Sure. Social situations zap my energy for days. Yeah, and a lot of times a common description of introverts is that they have a kind of a social battery, and interacting with others can drain that social battery. Exactly. Interaction doesn't scare me, but it's draining. Yeah, yeah. It's I identify as comedic relief. Yeah. Yeah. And so I see that a lot in chat, in on the Discord and in Leon's Twitch chat, is people will be like, "Yeah, I'm an introvert. I can't do this," or "What are introverts supposed to do?" And so I wanted to shed a little light on that. I'll be paralyzed about a 30-minute conversation for weeks ahead of time. And I love networking, but being on is draining. Yeah. And so I want to shed a little bit of light on that as an introvert myself, and sort of the way that I frame going into interviews and the way that I frame streaming as well. Um, Introvert, but people think I'm extroverted because I'm really chill. Yeah, and that could be some of the way that people see me as well. They might say, "Oh, yeah, but like you're out here, you're talking about banky behavioral questions, and you're streaming twice a week, and and all these things, and so there's no possible way that you could be an introvert." And I'll tell you guys, my secret is that when I'm not streaming, I spend most of my time happily alone, not talking to anyone, unless I have to for work and that kind of thing. But I just chill out. Like, I don't feel the need to interact with others. However, when I do interact with others, for example, here on stream or in interviews, I've cultivated certain skills and cultivated a sort of muscle memory of those skills that make it fairly natural for me to interact in that way, like to just walk into an interview, to walk into a stream and just start talking. And it's not natural for me. It's something that I've practiced quite a lot. And so I want to say, for the introverts out there, and Leon touched on this again during stand up today, is that if you are naturally introverted and less likely to interact with others, then you need to practice all the more to cultivate those skills and to cultivate those muscle memories. So a lot of the times we talk about um, introverts as having like a battery that drains more quickly than extroverts. I don't necessarily like the battery comparison. It's everywhere, but I don't necessarily like the battery comparison because batteries have a finite capacity, right? If I charge a battery to 100%, it's limited to that max capacity, right? It can never be charged more than that to give you more ability to socialize, right? I like to think of interacting with others as being like a muscle. Those skills are like a muscle. And so for some of us who don't interact regularly with others, that muscle is going to be kind of atrophied, right? It's going to be very weak. Um, it's going to be like, kind of like my biceps. It's not going to be very strong. And so if I go out and I go to the gym and I immediately try to, I don't know, bench press 300 pounds. I don't know. I don't lift weights. I don't know what weights are. But if I try to go and bench press twice my body weight or three times my body weight, then I'm going to have a bad time and I'm probably going to injure myself. And so, what you got to do is you got to strengthen that muscle slowly and carefully over time so that you gradually get stronger and you can approach those social situations more and more fluently and easily as you go. And eventually, you'll be able to go on stream and talk for 3 hours without really feeling the strain because you have cultivated that muscle. Yeah. And so that's why I don't really like the battery comparison because that sort of implies that you're limited because you are an introvert. You are inherently limited in how much you can do. It puts you into a box. It sets limits on your capacity, and I don't think that's true. You can still prefer to be alone or prefer to you know spend your weekends with your dog or whatever, but you can strengthen that muscle, increase your social capacity over time by doing it gradually, being kind to yourself, and practicing doing reps. By doing those reps, you can increase your social capacity and your ability to interact naturally and perform well in social situations. So that's something I wanted to put out there. I'm curious what you all think of that. I'm going to catch up with Chad here. I've been talking this whole time. takes effort to present the best version of myself. Yes, yes, absolutely. And even professional bodybuilders, like when they go and they lift massive weights, they're still like they're still working at it. They might be able to lift a lot, but they're still working at it. It's not that it's easy for them, but they can lift more than I could. And so, it's just about increasing your ability. It's not about being perfect at it. So before I go on stream, every single time, if I check my heart rate on my Fitbit, my heart is going like bam, bam, bam. My resting heart rate's about 60 beats per minute. When I go on stream, it's like, up another 50%. I'm going like 90, 100 beats per minute when I jump on stream. But I still, since I've strengthened that muscle, I can still get on here and I can talk confidently, even if my heart is pounding. You say sometimes people think they're introverts, but the truth is they just hate jerks, bullies, a-holes. Yeah, I mean, and that's fair, but it's important to not justify that feeling by saying that everyone you interact with is a jerk or an a-hole, right? It's important to not box yourself in because you just say, all right, nope, everybody out there, they're not worth interacting with. And that's an easy thing to say. But if you're trying to go out there and get a job, then you have to cultivate the skills to interact with people who may not always be 100% polite to you. So again, that's another muscle you can strengthen, like an on and off switch. Yeah, and sometimes it is like a switch. Sometimes I'll spend the entire day not talking to anyone. Maybe I'll just have, maybe I won't have any meetings at work and I just send Teams messages, I type them out, and I literally do not speak to anyone until I jump on stream. And then I talk for 3 hours. And so, yeah, sometimes it is like a switch. And I like that you said that because I almost kind of view it as going into an interview or jumping on stream. It's almost like a play. So if I were to go on stage for a play, I might be nervous and my heart might be going, but I have rehearsed my lines. I know the rules. I have a general idea of what's going to happen and I've practiced, right? I've practiced those lines. I know what to say. I have a feeling of the guidelines of how that interaction should go, whether it's an interview or stream. I kind of already know what I'm going to talk about on stream. If I go into an interview, I should have a good idea of the type of questions that are going to be asked. So if you've practiced your Banky, you'll know, like, I'm probably going to see some behavioral questions. I know how to answer those. I've rehearsed my answers for those. And, I've got the answers for technical questions that I could at least speak to, and that kind of thing. And so it's kind of like, when I step on stage for a play, I flip that switch, I turn myself on, and I am, I'm the extrovert just for that 30 minutes or however long it takes. And that becomes much easier with practice, with reps, regular reps, and not just going in there and trying to bench press 3 times my body weight with no preparation at all, right? Matt says, you're inspiring me to record YouTube tutorials even if no one watches. I can see how it helps me overcome imposter syndrome and self-consciousness. Yes, absolutely do that. Yep. And I found that, like recording training videos for work, I was the only one on my team on a previous role. I was the only one on my team with any video editing skills. And so they're like, yeah, if we write you this script, can you just like record this training video and edit it? And I'm like, sure. And so I found that really helped a lot. I don't know if anybody watched them. I mean, they were business training videos for an obscure product, so probably not. But it was still valuable in that it taught me, what's my cadence when I speak? Am I clear? Do I enunciate? That kind of thing. It gave me that kind of feedback in a very, non-judgmental way. And since those videos took a long time to record, it was giving me a little bit of practice every day. And so you don't have to record videos, but what you can do is practice in front of a mirror, or find a friend on Discord and get on a voice channel and practice interviewing each other. It doesn't have to be high stress, right? Your practice should not be high stress. When I go to the gym and I want to practice, core strength or fitness, I don't want to immediately pull a muscle. That's not the goal. The goal is to slowly build that strength. COVID isolation made it worse. Yeah, that's valid. That's very valid. And I think it gives a lot of us sort of an excuse to, and I shouldn't say an excuse because isolating from a deadly virus is completely valid, but it gives us, sort of this inertia of not interacting with anyone, even online, not never speaking to anyone, even through a medium like Discord or Twitch, spaced repetition, social interactions. Absolutely. Take it as slow as you need to, just do it. It's a learned and necessary skill. It's unavoidable as you move through life. Yeah, especially now that we're so much more connected as a society. And Ryan says, I had to start with only one coffee chat a week. Yeah, and that's valid. You can start as slow as you need to. Just start, do something. Even if you're not ready to talk to other people yet, like I said, find a friend or find a family member or practice in front of the mirror. Just do something. Don't get yourself into a situation where you haven't done anything, you haven't done any practice at all, and all of a sudden you get, somebody reaching out from your dream job. And they're like, "We want to talk to you in 2 days," and you're like, "Oh God!" And you're practicing and practicing, but you're still not going to be comfortable enough to go into that interview with full confidence if you haven't built yourself up to that point. You don't really have the time to ease into it when you're in the hunt. And yeah, maybe it's that you're not quite ready for the hunt, and that's okay. This is supposed to be an ongoing process, right? It's not that everybody's going to get a job in October. There's multiple waves of the hunt, and so what you might do is start now, ease yourself into it at your own pace, and then say, all right, I'm ready for the hunt in November or December. Tucker asked, did you start 100 devs in January? I did, yes. I had been working as a developer since that previous October, and I said, all right, I'm a developer, but I only know one language that's 50 years old. I should probably know some other stuff too. And so I decided to join 100 devs. I did try to Twitch stream for a while, which was a kind of networking. Yeah. It's kind of one way though, isn't it? Right? I see all of you talking to me, but no one is talking to me in real time, right? You're all talking to me in chat. Sometimes people's streams are delayed, and so yeah, it is a little bit of a different type of interaction. And so a great way to practice that again is just by going on the Discord and maybe making a friend, maybe somebody that you've only messaged with before. You've only done text messaging back and forth on Discord or your favorite social messaging, platform, and say like, okay, can we actually, just sit down for 15 minutes and practice a couple of these interview questions on a voice call, um, preferably a video call of some kind, but whatever you want to start with, just getting started. Yeah, and I want to tell you, so people are talking about their first experiences with coffee chats and interviews and that kind of thing, and I want to share mine. So, yeah, I used to be very, I would talk. I had like three close friends, and they were the only people that I ever talked to. Even like, up through college, I was still very not able to talk to anyone in social situations of any kind, including interviews. But I knew, like, I was like, okay, cripes, I'm gonna have to get a job soon, and I only really talked to like a few people. And so what I did was kind of what Leon suggested. I knew I wasn't ready for a job. I was only like a sophomore in college at the time. I was like, I know I'm not ready for a job. There's no way if I go into an interview now, I am not going to get a job, nor do I particularly need one at this point. Um, but I still want to maybe practice an interview. And so I went, there was like I don't know, a job fair or something. And I just kind of like picked one that didn't have very many applicants. And and they sent out an email. They're like, sign up for a time slot for a, 15-minute interview with us. And I'm like, okay. And I signed up for it. I don't even remember what the job was for or the field or anything like that. I walked in there and um, I basically said it was an interview in a little room with like two dudes on the other side of the table, and I walked in there and I said, "Hi, so this is actually like I've never done an interview before. I would just really like to practice with you guys if that's okay. So if you could just like ask me the questions you're going to ask me, and I would thank you for your time." And so they were like, "Okay, sure." And so they asked me their questions and I answered them to the best of my ability at the time. Um, and I kind of got a feel for what an interview is like. So that really reduced the amount of fear that I had going into when I actually started doing real interviews for real jobs that I wanted. That really helped reduce my level of fear. And it's basically just like practicing Banky, right? It's no different than practicing Banky. Is just, all right, I know, like I've heard these questions before. I kind of know what's going to be asked now. And I remember I was wearing like a synthetic blouse, like a dress shirt. It's kind of like that shiny material that's like very smooth. And I remember I sweated so much. And it was like a dark dress shirt. I sweated so much I had like pit stains like down the side of the shirt because I was so damn nervous. Just giant sweat stains. But that you got to get your foot in the door some way, right? And that's exactly what Quinn Sob said is that, with each one, I feel I learned something about myself and a way to improve. Exactly. The wheel starts spinning. You start to do those reps and feel a little bit of strength, in your muscles. You feel a little bit of strength building, and you also feel this, you feel the soreness, you feel the pain points. All right, what really hurts here that I maybe need to, to have a different technique and strengthen things differently. And Tucker says, get yourself a spiel down too. Have a little planned speech. Yeah, you can. And you know, it's not necessarily that you have to memorize everything down to the word, because then that can sound like you're, reading off a note card. But you should have at least like main points that you want to hit that you feel like sell yourself in a good way. Yeah, and MME said brings up a good point, and not everybody's native language might be English, right? English might be a second or third language, and so even more important that you practice and practice with others, because other people who maybe are native speakers are going to be able to help you to say, that phrase you used there, maybe you didn't, maybe you didn't phrase things quite properly and you've muddled your meaning. And so maybe things aren't clear to the listener what you were trying to get across, or maybe you use the wrong word and in your, kind of your little spiel that you talk about. And so they might be able to say, actually, maybe instead of, that word, maybe try this word instead and see how that works. And maybe that'll make things clear. And so running that back with somebody who does speak English natively can be really helpful. COVID made it worse. The social muscles atrophied for almost everyone. Yeah. And so, again, all the more reason that if your muscles are atrophied, you need to start strengthening them up again gradually as you need to, and don't hurt yourself, right? I'm in that situation right now. Had to schedule a talk with a recruiter next week. I've only done a couple of coffee chats at all. Yeah. So, you might have to expedite that process if you already have an interview, or it could be that you just say, all right, I've got an interview next week. Um, I'm just going to YOLO it and see what I need to improve afterwards. Practice your interviews on camera. Nice. What's been the most challenging part for you doing 100 devs besides time management and fitting it all in? Um, the most challenging part from 100 devs besides time management and fitting it all in. It's a great question. I hadn't really thought about that. Um, I would say actually probably um, learning to think in terms of full stack projects. I'm a backend developer, right? I'm a SQL developer. I work in backend. And so I do that part that nobody sees, right? I do the part that is behind the scenes. I'm back in the back end, greasing the gears, and making sure the wheels keep turning under the hood so that the users get their shiny data, right? And so I'm, like if you're familiar with that's classic story, the time machine. I'm like the Morlocks, like I'm underground, making sure the wheels keep turning for the Eloi. And so I think the hardest part for me has been thinking in terms of full stack. And all right, yeah, I can make the back end work, but how do I make an experience that's also good for the user? So how do I make the back end and the front end coordinate together to be a good end user experience, once it's out there in the world being used. And that's been something I really haven't had to think about before. Like CSS, thinking in terms of accessible color schemes and what styling should I use to make sure that everything stays visible and clickable and all that stuff. And how do I format for phones? And it's stuff I'd never had to think about before. So that's been a whole new ecosystem for me to figure out. It's a great question though. Exactly. And Matt says, I think that's why Leon says 60 interviews. It's like exposure therapy. Absolutely, it is. Some of them aren't going to go well, but all you need is one, right? Um, if anyone's worried about reaching out for people on LinkedIn, so far about 10% of people have even accepted to connect or responded. So don't waste being nervous on simply sending the DM, right? You're going to be out there with a shotgun. You're just going to be firing them out. Yeah. 100 pit stains. Yeah, it pretty much was. Yeah. Third language for the win. Wow, Mavi. And D5 says, I wrote a 3-minute intro and practiced it a lot, recording myself on the phone, polishing it over time. Yeah, that's a great way to do it. You record yourself and you watch yourself back. Because it could be that while you're speaking, you can't really focus on anything other than just trying to get the words out of your mouth. So you don't know, okay, am I speaking too fast? Um, am I, stumbling over certain words? Am I missing out on things I meant to say? Am I keeping eye contact? That kind of thing. And so, yeah, recording yourself can be a great way to evaluate your behavior. Yeah, and mock interviews, absolutely. That's, you don't have to go far for mock interviews. There's plenty of people in the Discord that can help with that. How do I manage my time between work, stream, life, and kittens? Yeah. Um, it's kind of just how I choose to spend it, right? I spend most of my time on this stuff. And it's like I always say, if I wasn't enjoying streaming or 100 devs, I would just stop. I would just not do it anymore. It's, especially like if I wasn't enjoying streaming, I don't have to stream. And so I just allocate my time carefully to things that I enjoy. And one of those things includes streaming. And so it's like Leon says a lot, if you have the passion to do something, you're more likely to do it, right? If you're passionate about something in particular, then you're going to want to spend time doing it and you'll make time to do it. And so hopefully if you really, really want to get that job, if you're looking for a job and you're like, yes, this is what I'm going to do, then you'll make the time to devote to it. Now, as much time, the amount of time that you can make to devote to it can really vary by person, for a lot of reasons, right? But hopefully you can allocate as much time as possible to this if it's something that you really want. Kunsab says, I've been recording myself with my webcam. That's awesome. It's made me realize that I need to relax, just be normal, stop being a weirdo. Don't try and exude enthusiasm or confidence. Yeah, so you can get a little bit too extra, if you're really trying to force it. Um, yeah. Piece of Shoot says, my experience with work from home and tech jobs are not that time demanding. Piece of Shoot says, I've been in tech for some time. A busy day would be about 3 hours of work. I don't have a dev job yet, but unless you are an understaffed startup, I think it will not differ that much. Yeah, and that's a great point. Um, During my day, there's many times when I can get up, get a cup of coffee, load the dishwasher. Maybe my code is running. Maybe I'm so I have a right now. I have a build. I have an extract transform load build where one of the components takes an hour to run because it is a massive table with massive fields that are like thousands of characters long. And so it just takes there's it's been optimized already. There's nothing else I can do. It just takes an hour to run. And so during that hour, I could go and, either work on some other things, or if I have nothing else to work on, I'm going to go up and, load the dishwasher, put some laundry in, make lunch. I don't know. And so you can have more flexibility of time. Yes. Once you do get that work from home job. And Calfe says employers will exploit your passion. Employers will make you write code 24 hours straight. They'll make you work, overtime, overtime, overtime. Some employers will. I've had an employee like that. I've talked about it on stream before. I it, I had an employer that was an e-commerce company. There was no option to work from home. I had to go into the office every single day, even though what I did was not, I didn't have to physically like interface with any of these systems. It was all via a computer. I was writing SQL, um, but I still was required to go into the office. I wasn't allowed to wear headphones, which for me meant that I would often get very overstimulated and feel like I was going to explode because, somebody wouldn't shut up in the background, but I wasn't allowed to wear headphones. Um, and I was in a shared office with three other people. Um, so that was chaotic. And it was an office above a very busy production floor. And so you had all that production noise as well. Um, and during the holidays, we were often required to work 12-hour shifts 6 days a week. No overtime. I was salaried. And so, yes, some employers will try to exploit you. The important thing is that with the way the market is right now, you don't have to put up with that. You can leave. And I left. And now my current employer, I'm allowed to do all the things I talked about. I can work from home 100% of the time. I can wear headphones. I can listen to music. I can go load the dishwasher if I feel like. I can get up and walk around. I said on a stream, I think I said on, I forget which stream, a previous stream, I said that when my cat died, I told my manager because I was not feeling it. And, I just, mentioned to my manager and they were like, hey, if you need to take time to just like go and process, if you're feeling overwhelmed, you need to take time to go process, like just go get up and walk around and it'll be fine. Don't worry about it. Do what you got to do to feel okay. And so that's the kind of workplace that does exist. You can find it. And if a workplace is not being good to you, you can leave that workplace. So I want to make that very clear that yes, there are bad employers out there. Not every employer is like that, and you deserve an employer who treats you like a person, like a valuable person that is contributing to their business. Madeline says, we'll take a break here in just a minute. Yeah. Madeline says, are you allowed to say what field you work in, what industry? Yeah, absolutely. So I work for a university, a state university in the United States. And so you might be like, are you like a teacher or like what? No, actually, so most universities have a massive administrative wing. So if you think about a university, it takes in so much data, right? Every single student that applies, every single time a student signs up for a course, every single time a course says that they need a textbook, right? That data is stored somewhere. And so this university has a truly incredible amount of data that is all stored in databases and needs management. And so that's what I do. I manage these I work specifically even in a niche of that data. I work with student data only. So there is student data, there's HR data, there's finance data, and all of those are massive. There's facilities data. There's, I don't know, so many different data categories, and all of that is, you know, separate chunks of a massive whole. Yeah. Piece of shit says, mine. Are you talking about your experience or mine? I assume you're talking about when I was at that employer that didn't treat me well. Yeah. Yep. There's employers out there that do that. How long was I with that company that didn't treat me well? I was there for 3 years, which was too long. I shouldn't have stayed there that long, but it was the first time that I'd had an employer that treated me that badly. And so, and they kept saying, oh, we're a family, right? Oh, you're so valuable to us. We're a family here, and you're a part of that family. If they say that to you, if they say we're a family, and so, if we're a family, we all work hard together. Nope, run, get out. Nope. if they're if you've ever done work for family, you've probably not been paid, and so yeah, that's not a good comparison. It is manipulation. It really is. Cowface, I don't do any C. I do SQL, SQL. Is my position considered ed tech? I guess. Yeah. I mean, it's tech systems that support education. Um, when you talk about like university scale systems, it can maybe become the lines can become a little blurry, just because some universities are so massive. Like mine is the amount of the population is larger than some cities. So it really the lines get a little blurry. In general, are public university interviews harder or easier compared to private tech? I don't know that I can speak to that, just because every interview is different, and it could even depend on the people who are interviewing. Um, and so the people who are interviewing you, that they set the difficulty level of the interview. Um, so yeah, and I don't know that I could say that it's always going to be blanket harder or easier. And also depends on what kind of position you're applying to as well. Um, that's going to determine the difficulty level of the questions. And Matt Wheelahan brings up a great point. All businesses are becoming data factories. And that's what Leon keeps saying. Every company is a tech company. Every company. So I like to think about it this way. Every company takes in data now, stores that data, and then has some kind then they analyze that data, and then they use that to tailor the experience that they give to their users. And in order to give a good experience to their users, they generally have some kind of interface or software or pipeline from the users to the business, digital pipeline from the users to the business. And whether they purchase that, whether it's like they purchase a website, or they build their own, um, still that's a digital interface, and somebody needs to take care of that interface. Somebody needs to maintain that. Somebody needs to maintain the data that they take in. Somebody needs to help the analysts have the data that they need for their analytics. And so every company is a tech company now, and every company needs tech workers, right? We're a family run for the hills. Yeah. Like Elon says, he's in the data business from his cars and not a car company. Yeah. Um, and even companies that were traditionally one thing are becoming something else. For example, you wouldn't think of a university as being necessarily like a a data powerhouse, right? Even though that there's just tremendous volumes of data that are brought in by universities, and for universities to stay competitive, they need to process that data, analyze that data, um, give students better ways of doing things like course registrations, being more efficient in allocating classrooms, being more efficient in scheduling course times. All of those things require an incredible amount of data and analysis. And that's like, for example, my university just recently rolled out a completely automated class time scheduling system. And so I think that's the kind of thing that people don't think about in some of these more traditional type workplaces, right? You're going into the interview process and you're like, I'm going to work at a Google, I'm going to work at FANG, like Facebook or Apple or Google, because those are companies that make tech products. But what you should do is make sure that you're diversifying your search so that you're looking for some of those maybe less techy roles and seeing what's available there. And yeah, Cowface, you're not wrong. There's bloated administration, there's fat salaries and that kind of thing. But a lot of the times what's happening is those salaries and those types of things um, have to be more and more justifiable, I guess. I'm not saying it's right, but they have to be more and more justifiable. In order to justify those salaries, you need data, you need efficiency, right? You need data, you need analytics, you need efficiency, you need to show metrics. And so all of those things require a massive amount of data backend and technical aptitude and expertise. Okay, let's go ahead and take a break. We missed our usual top of the hour break. So yeah, and that's the last thing I'm going to leave you with before the break is what Madeline just said. I love this. It's something I think about a lot. Yeah, that's something super exciting about tech. You could really work in any field that interests you without directly doing that work. Yeah, exactly. I don't teach students, nor do I particularly want to, but I still value the work that the university is doing to provide education, right? I think that's cool. And I think I still think education should be as free as possible, but I do value the services and the research that my university does. Now, I don't do that research, I don't teach students, but I still help support that mission within my role. And so, yeah, like Madeline says, you can get a job in an industry that you love even without doing that frontline work. You can help support that work as a developer or another tech related role. Yeah. Exactly, providing that support. So true. I read a blog today for fashion designers in tech. Yeah, absolutely. Every business is a tech, every company is a tech company. Yep. Okay, let's put 5 minutes on the clock. We'll take a break. And then when we come back, um, we're just going to keep chatting. We're going to maybe do some Banky. I had a couple other things I wanted to talk about. Or we can, keep talking about whatever y'all want. This, Huntober, chill streams. We're just, hanging out together and trying to make your job hunt as successful as possible. We're not your students. I guess that's true. I mean, I guess, but I don't go into a classroom. I don't walk into a classroom every day and teach students that way. Nah, y'all are my students too. All right, 5 minutes on the clock. Let me get it going here. One second. All right. There we go. Timer is going. I'll see you all back here in 5. Go get a drink, go stretch, whatever you got to do. See you back here in a minute. All right, folks, come on back. Come on back. We got about 40 seconds in the break left in the break. So do some wrist exercises so you don't get carpal tunnel. Fill up your water glass. Do a couple of neck stretches. All right. I'm going to go ahead and stop the timer here. And turn my camera back on. There we go. We're back. All right. So, yeah, Rascal mentioned just get a marker and slap classroom on the door to your room, and you can say that, that I was a teacher. And so, actually, that's kind of funny. So, for my like yearly performance metrics or whatever, yearly performance goals, it's really nothing strenuous. It's more of just like, are you contributing to the team? Are you, sort of a yearly evaluation? And part of that evaluation is we have to do at least 10 hours of professional development. And we did my mid-year review, so like just like a little check-in to see how things are going. And my manager was like, yeah, I think you've got the professional development thing. Like, he's like, I'm just gonna like mark that off as done. And I'm like, yep. I think I've accomplished that goal with as many hours as I've spent on this so far. Between 100 devs and streaming, I think I've got that part covered. And Carson says, I recently installed a TRX in my, oh, I don't, what's a TRX? To do quick circuits in an effort to take care of myself a bit more. Yeah, and that's important too, is that during this job hunt, you're going to have more energy for the search if you aren't, um, over devoting yourself to it. I know I made that mistake in college a lot of, doing all nighters and that kind of thing, thinking I was studying when I was really just tiring myself out. So I would do worse on the test. Yeah, college was not my my best moment in life. Um, Madeline says, so they know about 100 devs. Yeah, they absolutely do. And because my employer is good and values professional growth, they're perfectly supportive. I've told them exactly what I'm doing. I said, hey, I'm learning web development. And they didn't be like, are you looking for another job? Are you going to leave? Like, why are you doing that? They're just like, oh, no, that's cool. That's awesome that you're, personal growth, awesome stuff. And so yeah, I've told them everything. I've told them how often I have class. I've told them that I stream and I, help others. And they're like, yeah, that's perfect. That fulfills your professional development requirement. Great. And my manager has even said, if you get to the point where, you feel like you want to branch off into a different direction and not do, SQL backend stuff anymore, he was like, that's fine. We'll try to help you find another position that fits better for you. Um, and because their goal is to keep me around, and so they're going to try to facilitate that as much as they can, right? If they were to start to say, why are you doing this extra learning, like what are you, getting suspicious and that kind of thing, then they know that's just going to make me want to leave. And so instead they're going to be like, nope, growth is good. How can we help you grow? Because that's what you want to do, so how do we help you do that? And so that's the thing that keeps me around, right? Paradoxically, them saying that, yeah, sure, we want to help you grow professionally is what keeps me around, right? That's the way to be a good employer. Madeline, so yeah, I mean, they know that I do. They know that I do stream, and that I, that's what I spend my evenings doing. I don't make a huge deal out of it. Matt says, looking at, making money off fashion with tech, looking at game dev Twitch, and said, I was amazed at the character modeling. So I said to myself, what if you make character fashion that can be brought into the real world? Yeah, absolutely. There's so many different applications. And I saw a really excellent talk um, by Dylan Beatty at a conference. I wasn't at the conference. I watched it on YouTube. And it was called The Art of Code. And if you want to look it up on YouTube, um, It's from the channel is NDC Conferences, and the talk is called "The Art of Code." And what it does is he talks about how code can branch into art, and how code can literally be art. It can be music, can be visual art, and it's a really excellent talk. It sort of expands your mind about when you think about coding. It doesn't just have to be code on a screen. It can become art, and it can branch into 100 different other applications. That's what a company should be. Yeah. Yep. And I think employers are starting to realize that because tech is such a competitive field. From an employer's perspective, they have to compete to keep people. And so, what do they do to keep people? Well, cater to their needs. Yeah. Yeah, and there's so many other frontiers opening up, like the metaverse and that kind of thing. We'll see where that goes. I do think VR has a future, and so VR needs designers. It needs people who can have that creative streak and code creatively. Um, but yeah, I don't know that metaverse is the correct implementation of that. I'm gonna make an AI that makes dumb jokes based on my dumb jokes. Sure, do it. Yeah, do it, and put it out on GitHub and find a market for it. Yeah, sell it as an app. Do whatever you want. Absolutely. Let me see. I had a couple things I wanted to talk about, just in sort of getting back to like the oh yeah, and Chris absolutely knows this. So Chris is a music artist, a very good one, and they say Chris says coding can absolutely be compared and paralleled to art. As an artist, code can be very compositional. Yeah, absolutely. And thinking, having a creative background can kind of help you approach problems in a more creative way, and maybe expand your horizons a little bit with how you approach problems logically. Yes, Rascal, I would say that that's true. Yeah, someone who makes dumb jokes off of your dumb jokes is probably a small, yeah, that's probably just having a kid. Yeah, in a good way, most of the time. Yes. No worries, Chris. I just wanted to point out that that you are an artist, and so you have both sides of it. And there's a lot of folks in 100 Devs I've noticed that are artists. For example, Madeline of Trivia, if you're still here, they are a tremendous artist, and they already have combined art and technology to make beautiful tarot cards and playing cards and sell them on their website. And so, yeah, they're a great example as well. I have some of their cards. They're beautiful. Oh, the art of code thing. Yeah, let me just find that real quick if y'all are interested in it. 2 seconds. NBC. And yeah, I've really enjoyed Matt Beatty's talks in general. Whoop, sorry. Didn't know that was going to autoplay. All right, I think I found the. Yeah, I found it. I'll put it in chat for you. Oops. Make sure that's. Okay, there you go. That's a link to the video. I would highly suggest it. It's very entertaining, and the speaker himself is very entertaining as well. He even wrote his own. So in a wonderful combination of art and code, he even wrote his own programming language based on heavy metal songs. So do you remember? Maybe like 10 years ago, or maybe even less than that, how every single job posting for tech was asking for rock star developers, right? Must be a rock star developer. And what that really meant was somebody that they could, use and abuse to do, anything they wanted and work them all hours of the day. And so, rock star developer, they're going to work hard for us and they're not going to ask for very much money. And so he got frustrated by that. And Yeah, he got frustrated by that and sat down in a bar and was like, "Fine, I'm going to make a freaking code language called Rockstar so that recruiters can't ask for Rockstar developers anymore because then people are going to apply and be like, well, I know Rockstar, and it's not going to mean what they think it means, right?" Yeah, and so Rockstar is a literal coding language based on heavy metal lyrics that can also be played on a guitar. And so, yeah, it's art and code combined. There's so many applications that are outside of traditional tech companies. The power of spite. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's definitely worth a watch when you have time. Not something you have to watch, but something that might be entertaining to even just listen to, put on while you're doing something else. Um, that's the level of petty I aspire to be. Yeah. Yep. Strange can be, yeah. And I think Matt, he probably talks about several of the languages in that article, in his talk, and shows visual examples of them. Yeah, very very much very worth it. And he has another lecture called computational creativity, which I haven't watched yet, but I plan to. Um, yeah, very fun. And so, kind of going back to like the interview process. Um, Something else that I did want to touch on, I've really been enjoying our conversation so far, but I don't want to forget to mention this. Um, so another thing that I've noticed is that, we kind of talked earlier about how we go into interviews and speak to people, right? Whether that's via um, a one-on-one conversation in an interview, whether it's in a coffee chat, how we practice our method of speaking so that we can sound fairly natural and practiced and engaging, and hopefully, somewhat entertaining, or make your speech want to hold their attention and make them want to ask you questions. And so that's a great, like, that's one half of it, right? But then the other half is how you communicate via writing. So often that'll be the way that we reach out to people the first time, right? You go on to LinkedIn, you send them a message, you hit them up on Twitter, you send them an email, I don't know. And so, often that's the first contact that we have with these people. And so it's also important to practice your style of writing as well. And I think in the Friday tea spill with Stephanie, the job mother, um, Stephanie shared, kind of her tips for um, getting that foot in the door as far as communicating. But she shared a lot of things, and so there's a couple things I wanted to kind of go over again because there's things that I've experienced and I believe too. And my number one and number two, probably recommendations for reaching out to people are, um, keep it brief and keep it clear exactly what you want from them. Because if you're reaching out to these people, you're probably not the only one, right? And so, number one is keep it brief, because they're probably not going to spend a lot of time on your message. They're probably going to skim it and try to figure out, like, what are you asking of them? What does this stranger want from me? Um, and then number two is to be very clear about what you want from them. I believe Stephanie called it the call to action. um, and so, what's your goal with contacting them? Clearly you want something from them. I mean, let's not be let's not sugarcoat it, right? You're reaching out to them, you want a coffee chat, or you want an interview, or you want a connection, right? And so what do you want from this person that you're reaching out to? And I get a lot of people that contact me, and I love that. I'm totally fine with that. I love hearing from people on the Discord. I love hearing from people on LinkedIn and that kind of thing. But occasionally I have people that send me like 3 or 4 paragraph messages on Discord, and they'll tell me their whole life story. And I'll be honest, when I first see that message, I'm just kind of like skimming it, just being like, okay, like, you sent me your life story, but why? Like, you're not just telling me this because you want to tell me your life story. You either, you want help with a project, or you want to set up a coffee chat. And again, to be clear, I'm not saying don't send me messages. I'm just saying it's much easier for the recipient, if you are concise, keeping it short, compressing it down to only what you're trying to say, and keeping it clear about what is your goal with contacting this person. And well, while still being polite, right? You're not just saying like, you know, give coffee chat now. You're being polite, but you're also being clear and concise. Yeah, you want that money. Yeah, I mean, and you know, that's it's implied, right? That the end goal is potentially a job and some money, but you got to play the game a little bit, and you got to kind of like approach with respect to that person's time, and then they'll say, "Oh wow, okay, yeah, like I've got some time for a coffee chat, right?" Um, and they might just want to reach out to say thanks or some words of encouragement. Yeah, and that's totally true. I get a lot of folks saying thanks. And again, I'm not saying don't send me messages. I'm just saying be as clear and concise as you can, especially when you are reaching out to someone to get something from them, right? Um, if you want something from them, be concise and clear about what you want, and while still being polite. Yeah. And yeah, you're and again, I want to be clear. I'm not saying don't send me messages. I love, thank yous and just general chats with people. Absolutely fine. But just try to be as clear as you can, especially, if you're asking for help from someone. And that works on the Discord too. So if you're asking a question just on the general help chat on the help channels on the Discord, try to be clear and concise there too. Um, don't just post a question saying, "Hey, can somebody help?" And people will be like, "Well, they're not going to want to commit to that, right?" Because they don't know what you're asking for, how much time it might take. Are you asking to, for a partner to build an app with, or do you, need help solving a single error in your code, right? And so, if you are clear and concise and upfront, then you can get farther with those people. From a sales guy, don't tell them what you have. First, ask what they want and need. Yeah. Yep. And Mavi says, I'm late. Let's see. Blip on Nobody's Radar said, I have a bad habit of adding too much context when I ask questions. And context is not a bad thing, right? Um, but what you might say instead is you might frame your question in a couple sentences and then say, um, and then add a follow up message, assuming you get some interest, saying like, oh, what do you need help with, or I might be able to help you with that. Then you say, I have plenty of examples that I can send, and plenty of context that I can provide. Once you start working with someone on that, because you want to have a conversation. You don't just want an info dump, especially works when you're reaching out to somebody for an interview or a coffee chat. You don't want to lob a blob of info at them, right? You want that conversation to develop a back and forth rhythm fairly naturally. And because that's how conversations work, right? It's snippets of information that are exchanged back and forth in a natural way. And so if you can mimic that interaction in text, then you can start a conversation and a relationship. Yeah, imagine receiving a wall of text from a stranger. How would you react? Would you read it? Yeah. Embrace the typos, be the typos. I'm having too many. What was that? I missed the first message there. Oh, having too many typos today. Need some sleep. And yeah, and again, this isn't saying that you shouldn't reach out to people, that you shouldn't contact people because you're going to annoy them. That's not true. If you reach out to them in a polite way, um, in a polite but concise way, then you're more likely to get a response. If they feel like they have a wall of text to read and that they have to acknowledge each of the things that you said in your wall of text, then you're probably not going to get a response because that's going to be too much effort. Yeah. So Stephanie brought that up on Friday, but like I said, she said a lot of things, and so I wanted to make sure that that was clear. And in the templates that she shared on Friday, that's what they say multiple times is be I think what it says is use short words, short sentences, and short paragraphs, and be brief. Who are you? What is the purpose of your message? Right? And For a coffee chat, Stephanie suggests a 3-line email. Who you are, what do you want, and why them? Why did you contact them? And then a polite closing. That's it. This is who I am in one sentence. This is what do I want and why I'm contacting them. And then thank you. So something that's another thing again, that's another thing to practice. If you're not used to messaging people in that way, then you can practice sending those types of messages. Or you don't have to listen to me. You can do your own experiments, right? You can try messaging people both ways and seeing what you get more responses from too. That can be another way that you practice. Yeah. So any questions on that? Anybody completely disagree with me? That's fair too. If you or if I, if you're like, I don't understand, exactly how to facilitate that type of contact, that's fine too. Yeah, ain't nobody got time for that. It's the old cold call. Yeah. It's not creepy, it's networking, right? That's what Leon keeps saying. Is it's not creepy, it's networking. Yep. Just need to line up 100 organizations I want to target and just be direct. Yeah. The back and forth explanation. Yeah, exactly. You don't want to just, like I say, you don't want to just throw everything you've got in the first message, because then what are you going to talk about when you start a conversation? What else are you going to talk about? You want to kind of just ease into that back and forth to create a genuine connection with that person. No worries, Rayton. Have a good evening. The internal resistance. Yep. Again, just like we talked about, if your conversation muscle is weak, then it is going to be hard. You're going to have a lot of resistance just trying to flex that. And so you just got to practice it. You got to break down that resistance. You got to, I don't know, grease those wheels a little bit, get them spinning a little faster, and build up to it. Build that inertia, that momentum. It's creepy if you make it creepy. Okay, it's a little creepy, but we're doing it anyway. Right? Exactly. Uh, yeah, and I feel like, I don't know if it's true for everyone, but um, I feel like a lot of introverts do have a slightly easier time, maybe, talking to people via text versus talking to people verbally. I don't know. I'd be curious from the other introverts in chat if that's true for you. Um, but verbal conversation, relies on things like making sure your face doesn't have a strange expression, or enunciating clearly, or reading the other person's visual cues, and that can be hard for some people. So sometimes text can be an easier way to communicate. And so all the more reason to build up your textual communication skills, to be the best that they could possibly be, to really facilitate that back and forth via text versus talking to people verbally. Thank you for the follow, Zell and Mo. It's definitely true for me. My social life has been mostly through text my whole life, so it makes sense. So yeah, all the better reason to get even better than that, at that. Even even while you practice your verbal communication skills, getting even better at communicating efficiently through text. If that's something you're already good at, why not build it up even more? Asynchronous communication. Yeah, it's exactly what it is. You can take your time with your response. Although modern social apps are making it harder and harder to do that with, they got that little like read, I know Microsoft Teams has that thing where as soon as you as soon as the message becomes like visible on your active screen, like on the screen that you're actively looking at, it puts a little eyeball next to it, which says the other person has seen this message and they have no excuse not to respond because they've read it. And so yeah, that can be a little bit of a challenge because it kind of puts an artificial time limit on that response. This reminds me, I need to find some Slack groups. Yeah, absolutely. That can be a way you can make connections as well. Yeah. Oh, you can disable that? Hmm. No. I mean, it might, you know, at my employer, that's not a big thing. People aren't like, tapping their feet waiting for you to respond. But it is still a little bit, if you're really thinking about your response, or if you're not prepared to respond yet, um, that can be a little daunting sometimes, to know that the other person has seen that I've read this, and they're wondering, they might be wondering why I haven't responded yet. Turned off read receipts straight away in my work account. Yeah. I know you can turn them off on email, but I didn't know you could do that in Teams. Okay. I still probably won't, but it's good to know. Yeah. So, what other interview things are people struggling with? Are we struggling with Banky? Are we struggling with making connections? So, yesterday in class, Leon said basically just get started, right? That was the thing. That was the assignment, was on Tuesday. He said, start the data structures and algorithms courses, but also reach out to a company and literally start that evening on the hunt, if you hadn't started already. So so what's the struggle? What are people having the most trouble with? A lot of people have shared their struggles already, but I'm just curious if there's anything else. Rascal says, your response was delayed by 2 minutes from your average. Why was that? Yeah, and there's some employers out there that do that type of granular monitoring using those communication apps, right? Some of those apps can track your mouse movements and your mouse clicks and your keyboard strokes. And I think that's a terrible way to track productivity, right? Because there's some days when I'm just copying and pasting things and putting them together in the right order, right? I'm not typing anything, I'm not adding anything new. I'm just control C, control V until things are in the right order, and then running some code. And I was still highly productive, but I didn't type very much. And so that's a terrible way to monitor productivity. Piece of Shit says it's a nightmare for overthinkers like moi. You take way too long to think of an answer, and you end up not replying because a lot of time already passed. Yeah, that can definitely happen for overthinkers. I've done that before. Guilty. You're like, well, I should reply, but now it's been too long, and they're gonna think I'm weird if I reply now. I'm just gonna, sweep that under the rug and hope it goes away. It happens. Networking, making connections, how to find other engineers, finding people at those companies. Um, so as far as like the finding people, I know that Leon is literally going to cover that tomorrow. He's going to teach us how to build out a hit list, start to finish. So don't miss tomorrow's class if that's your struggle. Um, that's going to be, I think, really helpful for a lot of folks. Is just, okay, how do I do this? How do I locate these people that I want to contact? Matt Whalen says, I just feel like I'm not qualified. I just think I need so much more skill. Yeah, and that's imposter syndrome. That can be a hard thing to get past. Um, I think what's important is, even if you don't believe you have the skills, you have to start somewhere, right? Um, and the more you practice your answers to like the Banky and the kind of things like that, the more confidence you'll be able to project, even if that's not genuinely what you feel, right? Even if you feel like, yeah, I'm not going to get this job. If you go into that interview well practiced and with answers to those questions, then you're going to appear, even if you don't feel that way, you're going to appear more skilled and more confident. Because you're going to be projecting that aura of having the answers, right? So even if you can't get to yourself to the point where you feel it in your heart, at the very least, you can seem like that on the outside, right? For me, I'm worried. So Blip says, for me, I'm worried about what to expect when doing the initial talk with a recruiter. So the recruiter is probably not going to be someone who's like super technical, right? They're just going to be doing the first line basic check in the box type questions. So at least that's been my experience with recruiters, is they're going to be just like, checking boxes to see if you meet the basic criteria. And generally, they're trying to fill a quota, right? They're getting paid by like the applicant or something like that. And so they're probably going to take pretty much, they're going to take a wide pool of people. And then it's up to the actual hiring managers and the people doing the real interviews that are going to be doing the true filtering out and the narrowing down. And so if you are able to speak confidently and, answer basic questions, you should be able to get past the recruiter stage. What is everyone writing to connect with fellow 100 devs on LinkedIn? Is it as simple as an intro and let's be friends? I mean, I've gotten a lot of connections from folks on LinkedIn, and that's usually what it is. It's just like, you'll be like, hey, Claire, I've seen your streams, or hey, Claire, I've seen you on Discord. Um, I'm in 100 devs as well. I would love to connect and do some endorsements for each other. And that's all they have to say, and I'll accept their connection. Yeah. It doesn't have to be elaborate or crazy. Just something simple like that. And like Stephanie said, is you say who you are, you say what do you want, and why did you contact them, and then you say thanks, and that should be all you need. And that's what most people send me on LinkedIn, and I'm like, yep, cool. And then sometimes we have a little conversation about like, you know, what their ambitions are, or what they're struggling with or stuff like that, and I'm happy to continue that conversation. But yeah, for the initial connection request, it's usually really simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. Piece of Shoot there shared a link for Tech Twitter. Perfect. How to start the convo without sounding weird. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that, Instinct Dev. If you can give can you give an example of what you're afraid might be weird? Because weird is kind of subjective, right? It's only weird if you make it weird. TJ Ken says, my biggest worry is conveying an experience and not sounding inept. I'm sure that's why he says go for 60 interviews, but trying to convey that I know how to do the job, but also talking about lack of experience seems like a tough line to walk to me. And that can be a bit of a pitfall, is that you're going to want to say, you're going to want to qualify yourself. You're going to want to say something like, well, I haven't been doing this for very long, or, well, I mean, I'm kind of new. You're going to want to you're going to want to sell yourself short. It's a natural impulse for a lot of us. The important thing is to not do that. don't you got to play the game, right? You got to sell yourself in the best light, and that's something that you need to practice. It's hard for a lot of us to talk about ourselves at all, let alone talk about ourselves positively. So the first barrier is just talking about yourself at all, talking about the things you've done. For a lot of us, that's hard, me included. um, and then talking about yourself positively and selling yourself, like hyping yourself up, is even harder. um, and so a great way to do that, and my fellow streamer, Hello, It's Rufio, talked about this. They were having a really hard time speaking about themselves positively, like saying, like, here's all the cool things I've done, and here's why I'm a cool person. Um, and so I think they had their sister. They got on a call with their sister, and they were like, hey, sister, can you just like hype me up, like talk about my accomplishments for like 10 minutes? And the sister was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And the sister helped them see themselves, kind of get out of their own head and see themselves in a different light, and speak about, and learn how to speak about all the cool things they've done, ignoring things like lack of experience, or all the things that keep them up at night, right? All the things that you tend to obsess over in your head. Oh, I don't know this yet. Oh, I don't have enough experience. Oh, I haven't done enough code wars. That may be true, but there's other things that you have done that are just as impressive. And sometimes it takes somebody else to help us find those things and learn how to talk about those instead of all the things that keep us up at night. Ryan says, I was just writing 100 devs, let's go. Talking about contacting people. Hey, it's brief. Matt says, I'm more scared to get a job and being that guy. What do you mean by that guy? Can you tell me more about that, Matt? What does that guy mean to you? Yeah, that's a perfect message there, Mavi. So Mavi says, Hi, insert name here. I'm Mavi Sunshine from 100 Devs. Would love to connect with you and maybe exchange endorsements. Perfect. It does. It hits all the boxes, right? It says who you are. It says why you contacted them, and you know, I'm assuming you put something like thanks at the end of that, which would pretty much tick all the boxes. And Madeline says, I've started to feel more confident since starting Banky. Yeah, that's what it's for. You will. The more you practice it, the more confident you'll feel in answering those questions because you've seen them before. My internal struggle is with wanting to be straightforward and honest in the whole process rather than self promoting. My honesty wouldn't be very hypey. So you can be honest without being like rah cheerleader. You can still be honest while doing selective omission of things that are overtly negative about yourself, right? You can be honest about specific things that maybe illustrate you in a good light. You don't have to be super rah rah about it. You can still be real, true to your personality, but you can plan ahead and think about the things that you want to emphasize, the honest things about yourself, things that are true to what you've done, um, while avoiding other things that might portray you in a less positive light, such as, oh, well, I'm not very good at, you might say, yeah, I feel like I'm skilled in, you know, HTML and JavaScript, but I really don't have very much experience with React. I'm no good at React. And all three things might be honest. And so maybe you just leave off the third thing, you know. HR is like a dating app. Yes, HR is the dating app, and the date is the actual date is the tech interview. Yeah, I love that comparison. That's great. And Real Scouting provides some insight here. They say, my few recruiter chats have been fairly nice and human. A discussion of goals, much more focus on the other skills you have, the soft skills such as communication and leadership. Yeah, I'm going to keep saying it. It's going to keep coming up. The majority of the questions you're going to be asked are probably going to be behavioral questions. The ones from that shorter behavioral section in the Banky, those are the ones you got to have down. Just if you do nothing else, if you study nothing else in Banky, study the behavioral questions and know how to answer them without hesitation. It's like moments of silence. It's usually not awkward unless someone calls it so. Yeah, silence is fine. Pausing for a moment to think is fine. OMG says, I'm struggling a lot with Banky. It takes me an hour to come up with an answer to a single question and to look at others' responses, and they are super long and elaborate. So maybe you only answer one question per day. Maybe you only come up with one answer you're comfortable with. And don't worry about other people's answers. Do something that you feel answers the question and is true to how you answer the question. Don't look at the answer keys online. Answer the question yourself the way that you want to. And, there's tons of folks out there that have tried to help and built full answer keys to the entire Banky, right? But I can see why Leon isn't a huge fan of that. It's not something that he shares, right? Leon doesn't share those because the answers should be true to how you would answer the question, because that's going to help you remember the answer in an interview. If it's natural to you, if it's an answer that you came up with, you're more likely to not have it fly out of your brain in an interview. Instinct says, Instinct Dev says, I'm very direct and not good at small talk. Like, hi, recruiter person, I need a job. Yeah, so the art of small talk could be something that you have to practice a little bit too. And maybe if you're more of an analytical person, you could try approaching recruiter conversations more than one way, right? You could try the super direct way. Um, and then you could try injecting a little bit of small talk and measure the results that you get back. Quinsov says, I heard somewhere that weather can always be a conversation starter. Don't know if it's true, but it tends to be my fallback in moments of silence. Yeah, weather is great. It's just like um it's I don't know, it's like the white bread of conversation. It really doesn't have much flavor, but it can be used as kind of like filler for the rest of the conversation, right? People, it serves its purpose. It doesn't have much going for it, but it serves its purpose. Yeah, and Piece of Shoot also brings up research, right? Googling their name, checking their Twitter, learning something about them, trying to find a foothold. Yep, I completely support researching the crap out of the company that you're applying for and the people that you might be talking to. Um, so I did that when I got my first job with the university that I work for. This is my second job with them. First, I started out as a data analyst, and I remember when I was before I interviewed with for the current position, it was actually a so the data analyst position was in the finance department. I do not have a background in finance, so I already knew going into it I was not going to be able to talk like accounting or I don't know financial management or whatever they were doing. I was not going to be able to speak to that, so I needed to be able to speak to other things. And so I learned who was going to be interviewing me, and I stalked their LinkedIn. Um, and I learned a little bit about some of their interests and things like that. But I also learned a few things that maybe I just need to make sure I didn't talk about. There's going to be some of that too. Conversation topics to avoid. Those can be useful to see too. You can kind of see like what those people like, maybe organizations that they support, um, maybe their work history, and that can kind of inform the things you talk about and the things that you don't. Stalker mode activate, absolutely, do it. Matt Wheelahan says, I guess so. Talking about that guy. So they mentioned they don't want to be that guy, and I asked, what does that guy mean to you? And so Matt says, I guess I mean to be like value added immediately, but I'm realizing that's hard considering all these stack variants and localized biz systems. Yeah, no, you're you're not going to be value add immediately. um, Maybe like if you're going straight into like an architect role or like a very senior role with tons of years of experience, they might expect you to be value add immediately, but not at this level. No, they're going to be what they want is someone that they can train and mold to fit their pipeline, right? To fit their stack, to fit their way of doing things. They're going to want to what they're going to want to do is train you and mold you in their image to become the perfect contributor. And so they're probably not going to have you just dive in right away. Yeah, so, for example, my team just hired 3 new developers, SQL devs, and those folks have been on the team for about a month now, and they are still working through the training materials. I haven't seen, they haven't contributed at all to the current project, but we don't expect that from them. They're still learning. There's a ton of systems they have to learn. They have to learn the code structure. They have to learn the data structures. I mean, it's an incredible amount to take on. They have to learn all the tools that we use. And so, yeah, it's a process. You're not going to be a contributor right away. And I've told my story on before. So my answer to the Banky question of what is your greatest failure is actually when I got a job, as I got that data analyst job that I talked about, and I tried to contribute immediately without properly learning what data I was actually looking at and without doing my prep work. I just tried to, because I wanted to be that girl, right? I wanted to jump in and immediately wow everybody with all of my knowledge and amazingness. And I jumped in too quick. And what I did was spent weeks on working on something that wasn't what my manager wanted, and it was completely the wrong thing. And it was a really terrible outcome. First project, terrible outcome because I jumped in too quickly and I didn't ask questions for fear of seeming like the person that didn't know anything when I really should have just been asking questions the entire time. So, yeah, no, it's a knowledge ramp up is expected and it's the correct approach. Behavioral questions, the ones I put off the most. Yeah, nope, gotta practice. Hey, C Films, welcome. I'm really behind on chat, so sorry I didn't say hi earlier. I'm getting there. People are just saying such amazing things that I have to like. I want to call. I want to acknowledge them and talk about them. I'll be ding danged if someone interrupts my moments of silence. Yeah, a little bit of silence can make us feel awkward, but yeah, it really doesn't have to be. In an interview, you can absolutely take a moment to think, and you can even um, say something like, I've said this, I've done this before. Instead of just saying like, and then trying to answer like half-assedly right away. In an interview, I've said, "Wow, that is a really good question. Let me think about that for a moment." And then I take a few seconds and search through my little Rolodex, my mental Rolodex of pre prepared answers, and figure out which of my past accomplishments fits best because I've practiced and I have a mental map of all of my past accomplishments that I can just dig through and then produce the scenario which fits that question best. Eclectic, their answer keys, yeah, the folks have, it's a publicly available document. People have posted all sorts of answers to things. Pritoka says, "Can I get the Banky?" Yeah, if somebody wants to share the link, they can. Let me see. Wait, do I have it? No, I only have my personal copy. I don't know that I have the public link. And Count the Shells has a great example of what it's like to be a new dev. I love this. So they say most companies don't expect that for a while. So by that, they mean like full productivity. It's been 6 weeks for me, and I've had 0 tickets assigned to me. I've paired program while the more experienced dev drives and I tag along. Absolutely. Yep, that's super common. I'm really just expected to absorb knowledge and ask questions. Yep, that's all they want. When you're first starting out, and that's the experience that I had to Count the Shells, is I was given the dev on the team who was the best at like explaining things and doing documentation. He was paired with me for weeks, and I'm sure I slowed him down like crazy. But they understood the value of, you know, of training somebody right. So I was paired with this person, and just, he would say something like, "Hey, I'm going to work on um, such and such project. Do you have time to jump on a call?" And I'd be like, "Heck yes, let's get on a call." And he would share his screen, explain what he was doing, and I would try to ask insightful questions, and then build my knowledge slowly. So yep, that's exactly what I did. Shells, same experience. I didn't have anything assigned to me, and then when they finally did assign me something, it was like, dead simple. Build this teeny tiny table with like 5 rows or something, and just to kind of build your confidence a little bit. And that's true, Blip. So if you do look at answers to the Banky, you could try using those answers as a quick reference to learn about it, then summarize it back in your own words. Sure, that's valid too, as long as you make it your own in some way. I think that's what Leon has said. That he's like, if you have to look at the answers, at least reframe them in your own words. Yep. Yeah, keep it short. And TJ Kent, yeah, if you struggle with small talk, asking questions of the other person that's a valid strategy as well. People tend to like talking about themselves. Ryan says, "Oh, that's interesting. I had a coffee chat recommend interacting with them ahead of time." So, Ryan, does that mean like via messaging or what? So you have a chance of being more memorable. Interesting. Well, it's sort of like building a relationship, right? You start out with the back and forth conversation, and then the actual coffee chat then is the culmination of that relationship. Oh, and D5 brings up another great point. If you have access, you could try the product for the company that you're interviewing for. Yeah. It made a difference with the hiring manager for me. The interview turned into a product discussion and future plans. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. What I've done in the past is research the company and look at what's in the news for the company. So if they have any major initiatives, if they've submitted like a press release to the paper, or have something front and center on their website, then I better know what that is, and I'm going to bring it up in the interview. And I'm going to say like, "Wow, I saw your initiative for, I don't know, installing solar panels in the center of the city park or something like that. I saw you were spearheading that initiative, and it's like, wow, that's really cool. I'd love to ask you a few questions about that. I heard your team might be writing code for the power management for those solar panels or something like that. And because if it's something the company's proud of, then they're going to be impressed that you know about it. They're going to say like, wow, this person did their research. And they're going to have that's an immediate conversation starter. So yeah, I definitely agree with that D5. And Garce brings up a great point there. They said they reached out to engineers at different companies. Some people went silent after the initial connection. Week 5 of my connections from a few weeks ago, this week 5 of my connections, 5, I'm sorry, this week, 5 of my connections from a few weeks ago agreed to chat with me. Lesson of the story is be patient with folks. You don't know what's going on in their life. Absolutely. Being respectful will reflect nicely on you. Yep. Yep, absolutely. I really love that because yeah, you might be reaching out to people, be like, why don't they respond to me? Because this is very time sensitive for you, right? You want that job and you want it as soon as possible. But from the recruiter's perspective or from the contact's perspective, you might just be one of 100 people that's talking to them, and you know maybe they're very busy because their kid has soccer practice every night, and so they've been taking their kid to soccer practice instead of responding to messages on LinkedIn. And so they'll get to it eventually. Ryan says a friend of mine told me he was told that he wasn't going to be valuable for the first 3 to 4 months due to learning. Yeah, I mean, it's nice if you can start contributing something within the first couple months, but yeah, a lot of times it's not going to be significant, right? You're just going to be absorbing, learning, a sponge, maybe submitting a couple things here and there, a couple pull requests, a couple DDL files, something like that, but nothing particularly consequential. Quinsep brings up another great point. Um, I think people look at my age and previous experience and feel there is an expectation of knowledge, authority. I'm learning to embrace taking a back seat, admitting I don't know something. I realize the people in my organization I admire most are the ones who admit they don't know and freely allow others to take the lead. Yeah, that's when you learn the most. When you say, wow, that is really interesting. I've never seen that before. Could you tell me more about what you just did there? That's something I've never seen. So, story time. I was talking to somebody at work and we were on a call. We were talking about something completely different. And I was showing them just a regular Excel spreadsheet. And I'd just done a quick little pivot table on that Excel spreadsheet to just illustrate a point. Like I was doing a count of issues in the issue log or something like that. I was just showing like, yeah, and I see that, so and so has a bunch of issues, so maybe we could jump on a couple of those for them because they're going to be out of office, next week. Something inconsequential like that. And this person stopped me and was like, "Wait, hang on. How did you do that?" I'm like, "What?" They're like, "That table thing that you just did. You just dragged those fields in there and then it did the sum like automatically." I'm like, "Yeah, it's a pivot table." And they're like, "A what?" And this person is at least 20 years older than I am, like physically, and then also probably 20 years more experience than I am just in the workplace, in being a developer. But they didn't know what pivot tables were. Um, and so, but they weren't afraid to ask. And that's the thing. Like, they were like, whoa, that's so cool. Please tell me what that is and how I can use it. And so I think, it's important to always be questioning, always be learning. And now they know what pivot tables are. And they were so excited. They were like, I can use these, I could use it to do this, and I could pull this data down. I could, analyze it so much more easily. And they were so happy and so excited that I showed them that. And so, no matter how many years you've been in the industry, there's always more to learn, right? And it could be things that could surprise you, the things that, the gaps in your knowledge. So what's important is to ask those questions. Yeah, lines of code does not equal productivity. Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of it's about structures. What are the structures for your employer? Like what is their frame what is their organizational framework, right? And that takes you a long time to learn no matter what. You thought my shirt was a Supreme brand, so it's modeled after Supreme, but what it says is More dogs, less people. Yeah, it's meant to look like Supreme, but it says more dogs, less people. Introvert, remember? This is introvert life right here. More dogs, less people. Yeah, definitely not Supreme. I don't spend that much money on clothes. I think this T-shirt was $5. Yeah. Madeline. Oh, okay. Mine. Madeline has a good question. They say you don't have to answer if this is too personal, but you have anything you're saving up for in the future. I'm inspired by your financial freedom, and I'm curious. Yeah, I am. I'm saving up for a few things. So my house is pretty old. I do own my house, which is nice, but the thing that sucks about owning a house is that you have to maintain that house. And so my house is fairly old by American standards. It's not old for the rest of the world, but houses here in the U.S. Um, they're built to last for the most part, but they don't maybe last as well as houses in other countries. So there's some things about my house that are no longer the best, such as my bathroom and my kitchen. They're just old and things are falling apart, and they're very small. Especially the kitchen. My kitchen is basically a hallway. Um, really can't you can't fit two people side by side in my kitchen, and so I'd love to remodel my kitchen, and remodel my bathroom, and I've already done fixes of things like structural fixes for the house, like fixing the foundation, so that it's not, because my last year my foundation was literally like falling inward, like the wall was splitting in half, and it was buckling inward like this, which is not a good thing that you want with your foundation. And so I spent quite a large amount of money, to fix that up. But eventually, I would actually, and I put a new roof on too, because that was um, literally falling apart as well. And so I'm looking forward to getting to the point where I can start doing things that are sort of creature comforts, right? Better bathroom, better kitchen, things that make me happy versus things that just need to be done. So that's kind of what I'm saving up for. Yeah. Blip says, I'm worried that if I somehow accidentally land. Oh, and also I see Ryan redeemed a foster kitten can. Yes, I don't have any foster kittens at the moment. My current foster kittens went back to the shelter, but Intelligence and now you have both redeemed foster kitten cams. So I have two on back order right now. And so I will definitely, as soon as I have a new litter, you both will be getting some foster kitten cams. I haven't forgotten about it. So Blip says, I'm worried that if I somehow accidentally land at a mid or senior position, that it will be expected for me to orient myself, and learn everything necessary to contribute on my own without much direction. Is that an unrealistic thing to worry about? So I landed a senior role, and I was still supported. I was talking about getting paired with another developer. Um, who's the same person I showed pivot tables to, by the way. And super knowledgeable person. Like, even at the senior level, I was still paired closely with someone else to assist me with learning the ropes. They did expect me to understand what I was being shown, right? So I think that's, it was more about like, you've seen this before, but here's how we apply it to our systems, which are going to be unique. Every employer is going to have a unique way that they do things, right? And so a lot of it was that. It was like, all right, you already know how to do this, but this is how we do it here. And in my case too, it was things I already knew how to do, but they were like, well, yeah, that's the way you might do it, but we do it this way here because X, Y, and Z. And so some of it was like, just changing established patterns, right? So still useful to have, and it's still something that you know you'll, even at the senior level, I still had that assistance. You can contribute in other ways like fixing documentation. Yeah, it could be that you are, um, your first assignment is looking at some code that is legacy code that hasn't been properly documented, and that you are expected to document it. You know, dig in here, understand, figure out what this is doing, and document it for us, will you? And that actually brings me to another thing I wanted to talk about is legacy code. And so a lot of what we focused on in 100 devs is kind of learning what's excuse me, is kind of learning like what's popular right now. Your MERN stack is popular, and that's those are the things that get you hired. But what you find in general with companies that have been around for a while, or companies of a reasonable size, is that they will start accumulating, they'll have accumulated a certain amount of tech debt of old code, maybe written in older frameworks or using older methodologies that are no longer the new hotness, but they are still there because they need to be. So think about me, for example. I made it this far knowing only SQL, which, if you look it up, I think it was invented in 1977. And I only, like, I've gotten this far just knowing like a 50-year-old programming language. Um, and so, you know, legacy code is something that exists everywhere, and it shouldn't be ignored. And if you are the one that's able to dig into that code and figure out what it's doing and figure out how it brings value and maybe how it could be transformed into modern code, then that can make you very valuable. um, I think there was another talk by Dylan Beatty, the guy I mentioned before, who did that art of code discussion. I think he did a talk on the importance of legacy code and why it's important to not just bury it under the rug. It's important to understand it, to document it, to figure out what value it brings and why it's still around. Like, if it didn't bring value, it would just be deleted. So what value does it bring? And how can we embrace that legacy code so that we eventually can delete it? So yeah, brief sidebar there, but legacy code is something you're liable to encounter. And also that's why Leon teaches us older methods of doing things first, right? Taught us floats first before, you know, getting into Flexbox and modern, you know, templates. Like, he taught us the manual way of doing it via floats, and then said, oh yeah, and actually Flexbox and templates exist, and they're much easier to use. But he could have taught us that first, right? He could have just said, all right, here's templates that you can just slap on and they'll do everything that you need. Here's Tailwind and all this stuff. Um, but he taught us the fundamentals, the manual, the older way of doing it first, so that when we encounter that on the job, we like, oh yeah, I've used this before, and yeah, I know how to work with this. That could make you the MVP, not minimum viable product, but most valuable person. Yeah. So just remember that, yeah, there's a reason to the madness there, and that you will encounter legacy code. Nothing. I don't think any employer is ever going to have all new, all shiny frameworks and libraries and things. It's not possible. Yeah. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Yeah. Pivot tables are black magic. Dr. Moto asking the important questions. I said earlier that you can't fit two people side by side in my kitchen. They asked if I could fit two people. Could I fit two people side by side in the bathroom? No, it's too small. It's like the size of a like a coat closet that you might see like beside somebody's front door. It's basically that big. Yeah, no. Are you built on sand? No. Um, just an old cinder block foundation, you know, with mortar that crumbles, and bad drainage in the neighborhood. So lots of flooding, you know, in times of heavy rain. So yeah, that all that pushes in on the foundation. So I had foundation supports put in, like big I beams, and you know, along the walls, so they brace the wall. And then I had a sump pump dug in all around the perimeter of the basement. Yeah, they put a sump pump in all around the edge. So that's really helped. Detroit says, I'm hoping my Excel skills help during interviews. Yeah, absolutely. Excel is such a great multi tool to have. Um, I've heard it can be a good advantage because many devs don't care much about Excel or just don't want to deal with it. Absolutely true in my experience. Yeah, because devs are working used to working directly with code, right? And you know, pulling their answers directly into the console, or you know, outputting things to other systems. They're not used to working with that spreadsheet format. And yeah, a lot of them don't, because they've always had other methods of doing it, right? Via writing their own code, writing their own queries, that kind of thing. But Excel does fill a niche, especially for sharing things with the business side or doing quick analytics without having to use, like, I don't know, R or SAS or whatever. And so, yeah, it's a valuable skill to have, and it fills a valuable niche in a business environment. Yeah. And Blip redeemed Foster Kitten Cam as well. Okay. So we have three now. All right. I owe three kitten cams. I promise. As soon as I have kittens to show, I will. SQL says it's a baby language compared to Fortran. So Mavi says SQL is a baby language compared to Fortran. Yeah, I mean it's only like 14 years younger, I think, or maybe less. Maybe only 10 years younger. It's up there with it's in the top 4, I think, of like the languages that are still, around. No worries, Quinn Sob. Have a good evening. Welcome to the stream, Trive. Trive says, I feel a bit privileged as I was starting coding in '09, but stopped and started up recently. It's so much easier and nicer, and resources are far better now. Yeah, I would agree. Um, just like we said earlier, every company is becoming a tech company, and so the resources are even more prevalent now than they ever have been. I think it's important to do vanilla though. Yeah. Understanding what is going on under the hood can help you dig into that legacy code and be like, yeah, they're not using the most modern framework, but they are using something that I've seen before. Plus, we're in the software industry. Legacy code might just be a year old. Yeah. Well, we've seen that, right? Some of the things, some of the projects that we've tried to do, you do that npm install and it gives you a dozen errors because, oh, it's out of date. Oh, breaking change. Oh no. The package manager freaks out because the dependencies have moved on by 3 versions in just a year, and they've changed their format, and they've changed how you invoke them and all those sorts of things. There's no way that one person can keep up with all of that. It's not something that it's just not possible, right? So that's why it's important to have the understanding of the fundamentals, so you know what to Google, and then you Google it. Matt Whelan says you need an exterior wall with pump. Yeah, so I have the interior pump, and I'm that's another thing I'm saving up for is uh, better drainage and all sorts of things on the outside too. Yeah, so all of it, big money cost, but valuable in the end. So I still have a house. It's nice. It's nice to have a house at the end of this too. Excel is business intelligence. Yep. It enables the data hackers to get the analysis done without all the drama. Yeah, 100%. I love Excel. Um, Absolutely love it. I used it. It helped me get my first job in so when I first started out of college, I was an actuarial analyst. Boring as heck, but at least it taught me a lot of Excel. Yeah, I spent many an hour on the Excel forums just learning how to do stuff because it can do so much, and even more now that everything is cloud connected. Excel is connected to all the other apps, and so it can be extremely powerful and highly automated if you implement it well. Just like with any language, right? You implement something well, it can do a lot for you. But yeah, and Excel is extremely efficient at business analysis in general, and everybody has to do that at some point. Chris says, if we redeem enough points, could we get a dedicated kitten stream? Maybe. That's something I'll have to think about. I suppose I could maybe like set up a webcam. I have a little like kitten pen that I that I use, a little kitten fence that I use to keep the gremlins contained. And so that could be something that we could do. I'll think about it. Trive says, I think I'm most in awe of people who are incredibly tactful and swift and navigating shortcuts in VS Code or their editors. Yeah, and that's when you ask those insightful questions. If you see somebody at your job that is maybe more experienced and they have a really cool keyboard shortcut, or I don't know, setting enabled in their code editor, and you're like, wait, hang on, how do I, like, that's when you ask the question, like, that is so cool, how do I do that, can you teach me how you set that up? And then they're going to be excited to talk about it because they think it's cool too. And then you end up working more efficiently. Yeah, the speed, yeah, code editing at speed is wild. I mean, I will say that it's not everything, right? Being fast isn't everything. It's still very cool to watch. People who can, you know, use code editors extremely quickly and efficiently is still great. Um, but it's more about knowing what to do, right? Than generating a lot of output, right? It's knowing, okay, how do I do this logically to produce what the customer wants, or the end results? And sometimes that might just be a lot of copying and pasting. Sometimes, a lot of times, that is for me. But it's knowing what to copy and paste and from where. Because a lot of the things that I build, being a SQL developer, I build a lot of tables, right? I build a lot of views. Um, I build a lot of mappings, ETL mappings in Informatica. And so a lot of times what I can do is start with an existing mapping and then modify it to have the appropriate sources, appropriate targets, maybe copying some transformations from elsewhere and dropping them in to do what I need to do, and then just changing the fields. And so, and then, copying and pasting some SQL for the sources and target tables. And so, but knowing what to do and where to put it is the important part. Lord Dresder, welcome to the stream. Plant UML. I don't know what that is. I'll have to look at that. Architecture documentation. Yeah. So I'm not an architect. I can spec out like individual tables, but like actual database architecture is fortunately not something I've had to really do. We do have an architect who manages, the architecture for our student database setup. They're the way they keep these things in their head is just incredible. They can just hold all of this architecture in their brain and like think about all these relationships between dimensions and facts and Kimball mappings and that kind of thing, and just tie it all together. It's really incredible to watch them work, and then they output all the architecture in PowerPoint. They do all this amazing work, and then it's all in PowerPoint, which I think is just incredible. Not saying it's bad. It's just like, huh, okay. Which will come first, 24 hours of 100 dev streams or 24-hour kitten stream? I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I'm totally down if Leon wants to do like a set up a 24-hour stream. I mean, I'd be down for it. Rufio would too. They've said that they'd be up for it. Um, Leon's just got a lot of on his plate right now, but I'd be happy to participate if that's something he decides to do. YouTube changed the buttons and they look awful. Oh, I hadn't noticed that. I had a YouTube video open earlier. Let me look. The buttons? Which buttons did they change? Oh, thank you, Andrea. So yeah, I mean, I guess so far, we did hire some new folks on the team, and what's been nice is we set up like a little like private Teams chat, where we set up a little private Teams chat with just the new devs and the next newest devs. So that would be me and two other people. So like the real newbies and then the semi newbies, and it's just us in that chat, right? And so that makes the really new folks feel more comfortable asking like the basic questions, and then they might feel asking in like the big group chat with all the super experienced people, the people that have been doing it for a decade. And or the people that have been using the specific tools for a super long time. So they might feel reluctant to ask in that channel, but they can ask in the newbie channel, and feel more comfortable. And so far, that's been the case. They've been more likely to ask in that channel than in the whole group channel. Gray border rounded buttons. They're not visually distinct anymore. Gotta read. Oh, gray border rounded buttons. Are you talking about like? Huh. I'll have to look at that because I haven't seen that. All right, on the web app on the YouTube.com on the web or on the app. I guess I didn't pay attention. I'm that clueless user that they just push changes out to, and because they expect we won't complain. Because I didn't notice. Maybe it's an A/B test, and I'm the B test. Although I am that chump that pays for YouTube Premium, so maybe they're just like we can take this person's money and they won't even notice our crappy changes. First the Google timer, now this. Yeah, well, Google timer is back at the very least. I can forgive them for that then. I'm too boomer to keep up with things like that. I'm just not observant. Okay, you all have piqued my interest. Let's. I need to see what you. I need to see what y'all are talking about. All right, let's switch. Let's switch over to YouTube here for real quick. So this is the video I shared earlier, just art of code. But which buttons are you talking about? So there's a subscribe button there, and then these are the rounded gray buttons here. Are these the ones you're talking about? Oh, the like and the like these. These buttons. Oh, it is an A/B test. We caught them doing an A/B test. Yeah, mine looks different. Because these buttons are gray and rounded, but these ones seem. I mean, all these buttons seem pretty clear to me, but it may be that they look different for you. Interesting. Google, what you doing? Clear buttons for YouTube Premium only, I guess. Apparently, that's what it's looking like. Yeah. So, if you pay like $14 a month, you too can have readable user interfaces for the low price of $14. I forget how much it is. NFT buttons. Yeah, huh, that's interesting. Yeah, so that type of thing is I don't know, that type of thing is kind of fascinating too. That type of kind of stealth testing and manipulation um, that all these companies do to try to force a user experience. Right? They aren't asking us for our feedback. They're just forcing an experience on us and then seeing how we react. It's like a screen. It's what we might call a screen test, right? Um, and that's actually something I did quite a bit at a former employer when we didn't have a developer environment and we pushed everything to prod immediately. So that was fun. Search results in different regions. Yeah. Why not use an ad blocker extension instead of paying to YouTube? Yeah. So I actually do have ad block as well, but I really, really, really like listening to YouTube videos like while I do other things. So like really long YouTube videos, and I like to do it on my phone. Wear headphones, have YouTube on my phone, and have the screen off. So that's been the primary driver for me. I'm not saying it's a good value. I'm just saying that if I'm going to splurge on something, it might be something that I use a lot. And so in this case, I like to listen to YouTube videos with my screen off and my phone in my pocket, headphones on while I'm doing other things. And so for me, that's a good value, but it may not be for everybody or for most people. Yeah, and I do have ad block like in my browser. I never saw ads before, but I just like the screen off thing so it doesn't immediately drain my battery. Google is trying to get rid of ad block. That's true. They are. They're pushing for Manifest v3 for all their extensions. Yeah. People will find a way around it, though. That's the thing. People always do. They'll be if people want something. If the consumer wants something badly enough, someone will develop a tool to accomplish it. So I have faith. I have faith. I think locking screen off behind a paywall is dumb, but that's a partial. Yeah, right. They won me over with that. Yep, absolutely. Google curates via AI. Yeah, and that's a really it's becoming more and more important, right? The AI decision making that happens with no human involvement, and how that's going to affect the future. And so I think it's important to get as many new people in tech who are at least aware of the problem, right? Um, and who can at least be mindful of what's happening in the AI space. I don't think there's any stopping it. It's not going away. But I think what we need is more consideration and more people who are mindful of what's happening so that maybe they can drive change to make AI decisions more equitable for everyone. If it makes someone mad enough, then make that tool available for free. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I don't know. It's not a bug; it's a feature of Web 3. So I guess talking about AI and automation, yeah, and that's I think it's coming. I think people can be mad about it, but we're not going to stop it. So it's important to get into tech, and to try to be a force for good, or at least a force for mindfulness, within that dev space, to try to create a better outcome when that inevitable does happen of AI dominance. Yeah, and there's good things about it too, right? We've used Stable Diffusion. So on stream, one of my channel points rewards is to use Stable Diffusion, which is an AI tool, to generate an image for you, to generate art for you. Um, and we've had a lot of fun with that. So that's a positive. I would say that's a positive use of AI, to generate art for you. Um, and so there's good and bad, like anything. Think media query, maybe psych query. Woo. Yeah, we'll see where it goes. I don't know. Yeah. Well, we got about this has been a great conversation. We didn't even get to the banky part. Man, we've just been talking. I love it. We got about 15 minutes left. I'm happy to keep, to talk about whatever you want. We'll probably try to wrap it up around 10, but I had a few notes of things I wanted to just kind of make sure I mention while we're getting started in the job hunt. Let me see if I so legacy code, introverts and interviews, communicating. Yeah, okay. I think we covered most of it. Oh, the last thing I wanted to share. So, talking about sort of paired with the concept of legacy code. Um, you're gonna get a lot. So if you're like researching ways to land that job and hanging out on tech Twitter, you're going to get a ton of people telling you that you are doing it wrong, like that you are being doing development wrong because you aren't using their specific library or their specific new framework or the new hotness thing that's going to take the world by storm, and that it does X, Y, and Z super well, and everybody should learn it. And I think that so number one, they're wrong. You're fine. You're ready. You can do this. You're okay. You're always gonna have. You've seen people jump into my stream, and you know, not knowing that I'm already a senior dev, saying that I'm doing things wrong. Um, and and I'm not saying that I don't do things wrong, but saying that, oh well, you're never going to get a job if you don't learn this specific thing. Well, thank you. I think I'm done fine so far. And so just it goes to show that you shouldn't listen to anybody on the internet. But Leon has given you have the skills now. You're fine. And as we get into as frameworks continue to iterate and evolve and go more and more and more, the tendency is to chase that new thing, right? But then you get to a point where you're reliant on tons of what they call microservices, little bits of software that only really do one thing, and they all have to talk to each other in order to accomplish the task, right? You end up with, if you keep chasing the newest thing, that newest thing isn't going to be able to do everything that you want, right? You're still going to have to keep the old tool around to do that one thing the new tool can't do, and then those two tools are going to have to talk to each other. Um, and then you get a new tool, and again there's one feature missing, and so you bolt them together to do the whole goal of what you're trying to accomplish, and so you end up with just a bunch of interlinked microservices. And so I can see that kind of starting to happen, like at my university a little bit, getting a bunch of bolt-on tools that keep doing things kludgy, right? Yeah. And um and I think that that kind of just goes to show that no one tool is the magic bullet. If somebody comes up to you and says, like on tech Twitter, if they're like, "Oh, you're never going to get a job just knowing the MERN stack. Like, you can't get a job in Java. You can't get a job learning just JavaScript. What are you doing? Like, you should learn new buzzword framework, right, in order to get a job." Um, yeah, don't listen to them because no tool is a magic bullet. No tool is going to do everything. And I want to share with you one more YouTube video. It's one of my favorite tech related videos I've ever watched. Let me find it here real quick. I've got it. I already had it pulled up and everything. Um, Let me just make sure that this is the right one. Yep. All right. So you feel free to watch it when you get a chance. It's just called Microservices, and it kind of illustrates a problem that you'll probably encounter once you do get a job. Um, because microservices are the new hotness right now, and everybody's trying to link too many things together to do too little. So that just last little tidbit to kind of share with you. Um, better be cats in better be cats in stand-up meetings and cooler chats. Are you hoping for cats on the job? Is that the hope? Because I mean, if you're working from home, yeah, a lot of people's pets do show up in meetings. Like, I mean, you'll see cats walking across the keyboard, or dogs jumping up. I got to see my coworkers. So my coworker has a one of my coworkers has like a pug, like just a brick shaped like pug dog, and they lifted her up in one of the meetings. It was pretty cute. Yeah, so we've got about 8 minutes left. We still have plenty of time to talk about stuff. Any last questions or anything about really anything before we go? Anything you've been kind of waffling on whether or not to ask or bring up, or you weren't sure if there was time or didn't want to interrupt somebody else? What else do you want to talk about or ask or say or bring to the table? Bobby says, I'm learning web components in case the war of the framework starts and no framework survives. Honestly, I think that we're just going to keep building, right? It's just going to keep iterating and building on top of stuff that was written 30 years ago. Yeah. Also, another great talk. So I think this is another Dylan Beatty talk. I'm just like, this dude's just been resonating with me lately. Talking about how like oh yeah, he has a talk called "The Web That Never Was." And it's about all those little inconsequential decisions that were made like throughout time that sort of changed the way that the internet looks today. Just like small things, like Tim Berners-Lee, the guy that came up with the modern web address, him debating on whether to keep the slashes after like the HTTP, right? Like HTTP colon slash slash. Have you ever thought about why that's there? Um, and so, that was almost not included. I mean, it really doesn't matter. Like, it matters now because it's required for a web address. But when you're first building out the spec, like, do you have to have it in there? No, technically, no. It was almost an exclamation point instead. And so, there's all these little iterative things that just build on each other. Um, and now they're ubiquitous, right? And so it's just really interesting to think about that. And okay, here's another one. So, have you ever wondered when you're running when you're running a like a node server or something like that, do you ever wonder why you hit Control C to stop that server from running? Why Control C? Isn't Control C like copy? But why, in the case of a running server, do you type Control C to kill it? Anybody have any guesses? Hmm. You assumed it was closed. That's a reasonable guess, but no, it's actually weirder than that. Assumed it meant cancel. Fair enough. I thought it was short for choke out. Violent, but reasonable. The other keys were already taken. That's actually pretty close. So, back in the very, 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 very early days of electronic computing machines, um, there was a group that sat down and came up with the encoding of basic characters and commands that could be used with computers. So like basic encode like byte encoding for letters. um, and some of that encoding included certain commands like that could be sent to a computer, or sorry, sent from a computer to what existed instead of screens at the time, which was called a teletype machine. And so, yeah, electronic computers existed before screens existed, before like any kind of digital screen was even a thing. And so, what they did back then was they used essentially a typewriter. They essentially took a typewriter and they hooked it up to an electronic brain, and it became a computer with output that could be shown to the user via printed paper, right? Like it would literally print off paper like a typewriter, and that would be your output from the computer. And so they encoded various commands, such as carriage returns, which you may have heard of, and line feeds, which you may have also heard of. For example, have you ever seen when you push something to GitHub, how there's a little comment in there sometimes when you push your code, or the what is it in the when you do a commit, I think, that says something like CRLF, or something will be converted, CR will be converted to CRLF or something like that. And that's literally because it's trying to uh, make things compatible between PCs, so Windows machines, and Mac machines. And both of those emerged independently from separate old teletype systems. And so they have different encoding for carriage return line feed stuff. And that's literally control a typewriter. And then so getting to the reason why Control C is the command to kill a server, it's simply because when they first encoded all of these operations, there was a command that would literally stop the teleprinter from printing. So it was like a print stop. I forget what the actual command is, but print stop. And so each of these really sort of like typewriter commands had keyboard shortcuts as well. And so there was Control A, which was first command. There was Control B, which is second command. Control C was the command for, hey, something has gone wrong. Teletype, please stop printing and wasting paper, please. And, stop printing. And so that command has carried over now into modern servers to say, stop doing whatever, stop running server. And so, yeah, that's just one of those, it's legacy, right? It's literal legacy code that has never gone away and has remained with us into the modern era when it is completely divorced from its previous meaning. But it still works, so we don't get rid of it. Any teacher in uni that made us program was in C with pen and paper. First time I saw negative scores. Yeah, and there's all sorts of stuff like that. It shows the value and importance of legacy, right? It's still useful, so we keep it around. Control C, we keep it around. Um, uh, yeah, all sorts of things that are back from the earliest days of computing that still linger in the background of our modern systems. Everything we do now is built on the shoulders of giants, which I think it's really cool to think about. We never have to do anything from scratch. It's all there. Um, proof we need to get comfy with legacy code. Yeah, maybe not that far back, but if you do go that far back, you have fun trivia to bring up, over dinner or something like that. I'm glad you enjoyed that microservices video. Yeah, I love that one. They have other good stuff too. That comedy group. Yeah. Trying to think of I think of it. Trying to think if there's any other little fun trivia I can share with you before we wrap up for the day, um, or for the evening. Let's see. I can always share it on a future stream, but yeah, that was a fun one. Um, yeah, there's all sorts of really interesting things around. So when you think about like plain text, right? You think about you open something in Notepad, um, and you think that is plain text, or you see on, you paste something into a Word document and it says paste as plain text, and you're like, that is what you see is what you get, right? Not necessarily, because all that text is still encoded as a series of bytes, right? It's a series of ones and zeros in the end. And so what machine you paste that on as plain text actually can control how that plain text is displayed, what characters are shown. When you paste that series of bytes, what characters actually show up? You may have tried to copy something out of a program sometime, and then you go to paste it and it just shows up as a bunch of symbols. And you're like, what the flip? That's not what I copied. Well, yeah, that's because it's encoded differently from where you copied it to where you pasted it. And so, yeah, text encoding is really interesting to me. It's probably not interesting to everyone, but yeah, it's that those types of things are fun to think about. It's things that we kind of take for granted now, but somebody came up with it at some point, and maybe several people came up with things, different interpretations of the same thing, right? And so that's true even with things as simple as plain text. Oh wow, piece of shit talking about their septuagenarian professor would code with his hands-on experience with code was when computers had little to no RAM. Ooh, and every saved bit helped. Yeah, and that's sometimes what happens with issues with text encoding, is that sometimes things were coded back when RAM was at a premium, and so they would um, use bytes within that text encoding for other things that were not text, which could cause some problems. Yeah, they would like lop off one of the bytes and use it for something else, and yeah, and that would cause unexpected results. Yeah, so Fat Cat was debugging. That was from. So I've heard the room. I don't know if this is true, but I've heard the rumor that it was actually like removing physical bugs from like punch card computers or something like that, because they used to be so big that computers would take up a whole room, and you're going to get roaches or ants or whatever. That's how you get ants, and and they would chew through the wires or mess things up in there. Yeah, yeah, I could definitely see that. Matt says, I wrote papers as a kid about this with language, like meaning and usage of words, context, time, slang. Yeah, I've always loved etymology, like study of words. And so transferring that over into, uh, computing, the study of um, how language works in a computer is really interesting as well. Yeah. It was when computers used punctured paper as programs. Yeah, punch cards. Yep. So if you didn't know, again, back before screens, um, when we talked about how computers outputted things, right? They could output things via a teletype, um, but a lot of times input was taken in via literal punched cards. And so what you would do is if you wanted to write a computer program, you would punch holes in a card to tell the computer what to do, and you would have a stack of cards, this big, and you'd have to feed them into the computer in order to give that sequence of instructions. So if you make a mistake, you got to start over. You punch a card wrong, you got to start over. You couldn't just kill your server and run it again, right? And so yeah, that's 80 characters. Okay, Geico says 80 characters per line came from punch cards. Oh, so like you're talking about like the a number of characters on a line on a display. Yeah, actually, yes, I've heard that. That's right. I remember that now. Yeah, yeah. Early and that's the kind of thing that it's just it becomes normal, but it was all of this was novel and controversial at some point, right? Screen resolution is still multiples of 80. Yeah, you're right. Yep. All the way back from because punch cards had a limit of punches per line. Yep. I love this kind of trivia. It's, you know, people are like, yeah, it's obvious. It's obvious. HD resolution is 1080 by whatever or seven or whatever by 1080. That's HD resolution. But why? Like, yeah, why? Well, oh, okay. We go all the way back to punch cards, and they had a limit of 80 per line, and so then every screen became a multiple of 80. Yeah, I just love thinking about that stuff. Stack overflows when you had too many cards and you drop them all. On September 1947, a team of computer scientists reported the world's first computer bug, a moth trapped in their computer at Harvard University. Yeah, that's awesome. Oh, and so another interesting thing I remembered. So we talked about those. There used to be special text encoding, like byte strings that were created exclusively for sending commands to teletype machines, right? And so eventually, IBM was like, yeah, I mean, we have like teletypes aren't a thing anymore. We have screens now. So we could probably repurpose a few of these to mean other things. And so what they did is they kind of overwrote them to have other symbols like smiley faces. Like those old teletype commands became like smiley faces and playing cards. And like the symbol sets that you remember seeing maybe on your Windows 95 computer when you were messing around in Word. You would go into you click the symbol button to see what cool symbols you could put in there. And some of those are the old IBM encoding symbols that replace the old teletype commands. And so an interesting side effect of that was that when those old IBM machines would like crash beyond recovery, they would just crash super hard. They would throw up on the screen a bunch of smiley faces and playing cards and music notes because they were desperately trying to send these stop commands to a teletype that didn't exist anymore. So instead it's like smiley face, smiley, smiley face, smiley, smiley. Yeah, which I thought was pretty interesting. Instead it was just a desperate flurry of playing cards and music notes. I argue the moth was a feature. It was a punch. So after punch cards, it was a punch tape about 2 inches wide. I worked with those. Wow, that's awesome, D5. Yeah. I think my dad mentioned that when he was in college and he got the rare opportunity to use the communal computer, like there was only a few terminals that they could use. He didn't do too much with it. He's never been a computer guy. He still isn't. He just got a smartphone like last year. But he did get the chance to use the computer for class a few times, and I think he said he had to use like that tape type stuff. Bathing Ape says, "How are you doing on the 100-hour project?" Yeah, so I'm not gonna have it ready to turn in tomorrow, but I'm not on the track. I'm not on the job hunt right now, so I'm kind of taking my time with it. But actually, I saw somebody else recently built their own foster kitten app, which I thought was really cool. So I actually went back and reworked a few of my things because I liked a few of the things that they did. So yeah, I'm taking my time with it, and also too, um, I'm on the. I'm trying to get an interview with somebody actually at the shelter that I'm trying to do this for, to get a more in-depth picture of like what they would like to see in this app. Um, because again, doing that, we talked about at the very beginning of the stream, we're bringing it full circle. We talked about prep and understanding the requirements of, from your user, understanding the inputs, understanding the outputs, examples of what they want to see, and talking through the methods with them. And so I think, that's what I'm trying to do with the population that I'm trying to serve. Yeah. What styling software am I using? I mean, I'm not really like I'm not using specific software. I mean, like Figma kind of helped with the design. And then I like material. I just like the look of Materialize. So um, I've been using right now. I'm using Handlebars Materialize, but I need to sneeze. Excuse me. Excuse me. Me. You want some help testing your catalog app? Yeah, absolutely. Once I get my new yeah, hit me up on Discord, and then once I get my next foster litter in, I have no idea when that's going to be. Um, yeah, I can try to help test that out for you. Yeah, I love Materialize too. I just like the way it looks. Right? It just looks usable. And we talked earlier about how that's one of my biggest struggles is figuring out the user experience. And I have no eye for color. I don't know what colors go together. I don't know what things are visible for people. And Materialize just makes things look nice and look readable. And I'm like, yes, please give me that. I don't want to mess with it. Thank you. I'm a dinosaur. Ever hear about Pascal? I have heard about Pascal. Yeah. Definitely. I mean, yeah, I work with a semi dinosaur language. SQL is pretty old. I've heard of those old languages. Okay. Well, folks, I think it's about time to wrap it up. I've been loving the discussion. We had some really fun topics this evening. I really enjoyed it as always. Um, and so, yeah, but I think it is time to wrap it up and go get started. Go start on the job hunt. Don't spend all your time learning data structures and algorithms. That's going to be so. My last words today, it's going to be tempting to spend all your time learning data structures and algorithms because that's something you can check off, right? That's something you can be like, I finished all the lessons for the DSNA course and I'm done. Yay, good, go me. But remember the end goal, and that's what Leanne keeps saying. He's like the data structures and algorithms, it's just extra, right? The focus right now is the hunt. And so do that. Use the skills that we talked about tonight. Um, at the very least, start practicing. If you're an introvert and you need to ease into it, you need to start doing some gentle reps of interacting with other people to build your muscles. Right? We talked about muscles. If you are atrophied in social interaction, start gentle, but start now. And whatever you got to do that, that's what you need to do. So I hope you're able to do that. And I'll see you all tomorrow in class when I think Leon is going to help us learn how to stalk people on LinkedIn. So I'm here for that, definitely. Um, and yeah, get that hit list started. So I hope everybody has a great evening. And again, I really enjoyed our conversation. Yay, stalking. Back in my day, we programmed both ways uphill. Yeah, and Blip is volunteering to maybe help participate in a Discord call with other introverts and sit awkwardly. Yes, do it. Even if you delay for a little while, don't delay forever. Just sit awkwardly in a Discord call at some point. Get your feet wet. Get your foot in the door. Start doing those reps and strengthening that muscle. Congrats on the new job, Dion. All right, let's find someone to raid before everybody drops off. Let's spread the love, as always, and find a good raid target. Okay, who is online? Yeah, we got Midnight Simon. Piece of Shit says, I'm down for a few awkward calls in Discord. Yeah, see, people want to connect. So take advantage of that. All right, we're going to raid somebody. Yeah, we got a lot of good choices. Ooh, okay. Midnight Simon, Freckled Science, Time Enjoyed. So I'm seeing Time Enjoyed, Freckled Science, Team Vash, Nick One Data Sci, and Midnight Simon. I think those are all excellent choices. Um, Oh yeah, Freckled has a guest. Okay. Yeah, let's maybe let's check in and see what Freckled Science is doing. What they're with their guests. They're always fun. All right. So I'm going to drop you off with Freckled. Ooh, they're doing image forensics and looking at scientific dishonesty. That looks really interesting. We were talking about, the perils of AI and the modern web, and this might be one of them. Is the potential to fake scientific results. So let's go ahead and raid them and see what they're talking about. Awesome. Thanks, Laylo. All right. Raid is starting now. I will see you all tomorrow for class. Have a good one.